Hey, thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Patrick podcast, one of the realest podcasts in the world, the land, the galaxy, and the whole entire universe. I have a special guest. He is the executive director and founder of Abundance Foundation, which is recovery type things, right?
Yeah,
All
we
right.
do sober living and recovery coaching, basically outpatient addiction treatment in Fort Collins.
Awesome. And this is Brian Bauer. So how's everything going?
Man, it's good. Everything's real good. It's been 2 years now. It's taken off super fast, and we're making a difference up here. So it's good.
That is awesome. So what got you into that?
Oh, that's a loaded question. so I've got, as of the other day, 11 and a half years of my own sobriety. So I got sober.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I got sober back in 2012 out in California. I went out there for treatment, and so that's where my journey into all of this started, was back then. So we can get into that later on. But for the foundation, it's been this last 2 years. It really started, well, more or less like 3 to 4 years. We started really in 2020 during COVID, when everything else shut down treatment center wise, and people weren't able to get access to treatment centers. So we started working with people that were in really dire situations that didn't have access to treatment. And that was mainly of the Medicaid population. So started doing that in Denver in 2020 and just kind of figuring out as we went. And using this recovery coaching model was pretty new at the time. And we just kind of, what I've done over time is morph that into more of a structured system. It was kind of Wild West way of doing recovery for a while. And now we've kind of put that into a structured system that really allows us to speak into people's lives while they're doing life and recovery at the same time.
Man, that's pretty incredible.
Yep.
Wow. So what is your end goal to this?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the end goal is, but the model that we have is duplicatable.
Okay.
So the idea is that we can reach a lot of people with what we're doing. Instead of having such a limited number like you do in a normal treatment center, we're able to reach a lot of people at once. And so the capacity to do it on a big scale is really there for us right now.
So do you plan to expand outside of Colorado?
Ideally. Okay. Right now we do everything through all of our services are through Medicaid. So we don't do any private pay and we don't do any insurance.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And that's really where the need is, right? So back to kind of the original question. I was working in residential treatment for 4 years. So I'm also a certified addiction specialist, and I got my certification and training while I was working at a treatment center called North Star Transitions in Boulder. And so I worked in their residential program, helped kind of build that up, men's, women's, co-ed for 4 years. And I got to train under some really amazing people through that process. But what I realized is that 30 days or 60 days, 90 days of inpatient treatment isn't the answer. And I really found that out through my own experience, and then also through working in the industry, that when people get out of treatment, they're kind of left in this no man's land, right? They get out and there's this gap where it's like, okay, I've been structured for so long, and then I get out, I'm trying to readjust to society, and I don't really know what to do next. So people will go to a sober living house, or they'll go to an outpatient program, but there's not really, or they'll go to 12-step meetings, which are all great, but they don't really have anybody showing them how to do all the things necessary to start rebuilding a life and reintegrate back into society. And so that transition period is where all of the relapse and recidivism rates are.
Wow. So how's the success rate so far?
Right now, we went through the numbers recently, and we're at, in this first 2 years, about a 70% sobriety success rate. We get a lot of factors that are going into it to collect data on, but sobriety rate is at 70% right now.
That's pretty astounding.
Yeah, and the national average right now is less than 5. I think it was like, there's 1 or 2 or 3% overall, and that's kind of the numbers that I was seeing before, was around that range. It was like follow up with people in their long term, and there's just a handful of people that I know even today that are still sober from that period of time.
Have you had anybody that relapsed?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But what's cool about kind of what we're in, when you're in a different setting, when somebody relapses, a lot of times they get kicked out, right? They get kicked out or they get transferred to another program, and like the cycle keeps repeating. the way that we're kind of structured, if somebody does relapse, when that stuff does happen, we're able to get them into like a detox or another treatment program and stay in contact with them with their through the use of their recovery coach, and then bring them back into our program, right? So the whole idea is that as they're like, there's not going to ever be a point in time where they get abandoned, and that's a big thing. Is these treatment programs are kind of set up, I don't want to say for people to fail, but they're not set up to succeed when you relapse, right? Because it's like, and you know, we get these sayings like relapse is part of recovery, and it's like it can be, but it's not really. And it's kind of been this acceptable thing. But really what happens is somebody relapses and they get kicked out, and then they spin out and go the other way. But if we're able to maintain contact with somebody through their relapse, through the detox, and get them back plugged in again, it's like that was a slip up, and it's actually a slip up because they can come back and be right back into what they were doing before, and get the immediate need addressed of the relapse.
Wow, that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
So do you guys provide like education for people as far as like how to stay sober?
Yeah. So a lot of this is based on my personal recovery, right? So what was different for me, so I went through basically like 60 days worth of inpatient treatment. And that time frame went really fast, right? I was barely detoxed after that period in time. I was a 24/7 alcoholic before that, and we can talk about that later. But so when I got into it, I was really just trying to like clear my brain for that first 60 days. I wasn't really, they taught us a lot of education and stuff, but nothing really sunk in. When I got out, I got plugged in with some 12-step guys, an AA sponsor, and through those guys got plugged into a solid group of men that did recovery, number one, but number two really took me in and showed me how to just do life things again, right? So we would go to church together, or we'd go to the gym together, or we'd go surfing, or we'd go play golf, or like just normal things. And so that really plugged me back into like how to just do life again. And so everything that we do now is based around that main context. Is like, yeah, we want to focus on recovery. We want to do meetings. We want to do have you meeting with your probation officer, counselor, therapist, all of these things, and doing a lot of focus on recovery. But we want to see you rebuild life too. And so we do a lot of fun activities. So in combination with the recovery side, we're going bowling or playing laser tag or going on snowboarding trips or going to baseball games or CSU games or whatever it is, to start to have that normalcy part of life in combination with the education. And so as we're going on, we're trying to do more on the education side. And that's going to come up with getting involved with Department of Corrections and the local jail and all of these things.
Oh, man. I hope you flourish, man. So you ever have a moment where you want to relapse yourself or no?
No. I was super fortunate to have that strong group of men early on that really showed me this whole thing. And the big thing for me is I grew up and I didn't have any type of relationship with the church or with God or anything and no spiritual connection. And so when I got in recovery, I got involved with Celebrate Recovery and these guys that were part of Saddleback Church. And so they all love Jesus. I mean, they're sold out. And so I get into this, I get into like that group of guys and they're all in. And I'm just like, what did I get myself into? I'm in a different world, man. I go into the sober recovery meeting. They bribe me to get me in the door, but like they said, there's going to be pizza and hot dogs and cookies, and I'm in a sober living and I'm starving and I'm, 60 days sober and I'm still, fiending. And there's like, yeah, come get some pizza. And so I show up and get pizza. I'm like, this is great. And then the band starts playing and everybody's praising Jesus. And I'm like, where am I at, man? Yeah. But I stuck around long enough I was like, the one thing about it was I saw the lives that they were living. And I was like, whatever they're doing, I'm going to just do that, And because I didn't, like, one fortunate thing is I never had a negative context of the church. One thing that happens a lot is like people get into recovery and there was some type of abuse of power that was related to either a person from the church or somebody that called themselves Christian and they were a hypocrite about it and whatever. I didn't have any of that, fortunately. And so for me, it was like, I was so desperate that I'm like, I'm in. like whatever I got to do. And so it took a while for me to get to that. But through that process is where the obsession to drink went away. Like, I don't know, I didn't have necessarily like a white light moment like people talk about, where the obsession was removed. But I remember that there was one day that I woke up and I went the whole day and I went to work and I went to the gym and these other things. And by the end of the day, I was like, man, you know what? I didn't have one thought of drinking today. And I don't know how many days it was before that or after that, and since that time, I've never had any desire for it.
So did you go to therapy?
I've done all kinds of therapy. I actually still do therapy.
Okay, good.
I was actually before this. I was at my therapist this afternoon.
Really? Okay, that's what's up.
So I'm like, I don't know if I can go do this podcast tonight, man. She went to do some deep shit today, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, that therapist's good.
She's good. Yeah, she's real good. So I continue to do that, and so I did a lot of that early on. But the thing was, the drugs and alcohol was really a symptom of a lot of like deeper shit that I haven't worked through,
Yeah.
And so the thing about that is that it's transferred over to so many other things over the course of time, right? It's been money, and it's been women, and it's been food, and it's been the gym, and it's been like all of these things that I've taken to like a toxic and compulsive level over the last 11 years in some form, So it's like, yeah, I haven't picked up a drink or a drug, but I've done some pretty pretty heinous shit that's outside without picking that up,
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I've been up. I feel it. No judgment at all. So does your family have any like struggles with addiction? Because my family definitely have some.
Yeah, so my parents don't. So that I had a good childhood, good parents. Grew up in Littleton, Colorado, so suburb area. My parents don't, but it's ran through both sides of my family.
Like uncles and cousins?
Yeah.
Okay.
So some form it's been on both sides, and that's been generationally. And there's like one thing about it now is like we can recognize addiction now, in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, like you being like, it was just normal, like just to be an alcoholic, like everybody's an alcoholic,
right?
Or it just wasn't called that. It's like we just drink every day because that's what we do. So yeah, it's definitely been there. As far as that goes.
So how does your family feel about you being sober? Did they even know you had a problem?
Oh, they did.
Okay.
It was pretty obvious for
a
good amount of time.
Right.
And I'd get in trouble and stuff growing up and all that stuff. So it was never really in question. It was kind of just like they let me write it out until I was ready to admit that it was actually a problem.
So was it hard for you to do that?
It was, man. It took it really took that rock bottom for me to get there. And it was, there was a number of years. So I got sober at 28, but I'd say from, 18 to 28, I was you would call it functioning alcoholic. I was able to hold a job overall. And I never really had a whole lot of negative, consequences to it. I got away in some court cases and got off the hook when I shouldn't have in a couple of different scenarios. Thought I was above the law for a little while.
Yeah.
You know how that shit goes. but I was, 18, 19, 20, 21. And so I was drinking every day, partying and stuff. And that was just the lifestyle. And until it was like in my early 20s, and I'd wake up on those days and there'd be days where like I needed a drink and I'd be a little shaky, and then I'd do that. I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm good. And then what it started to become was an aspect of my personality, right? It was like who I was when I was drinking. One of those weird things, like I worked at Wells Fargo for a while.
Oh, really?
So I was doing some personal banking and these things. And as an alcoholic, it was real good. Like I did really well being personable with people, because that's my drunk personality.
Yeah.
Right? Like that makes me more more outgoing and whatnot. And so that was a big thing for alcohol for me. It was like when I found that, and I really got into it in high school. So I got a fake ID when I was in high school, and it worked at the little Korean liquor store up the street. Mr. Long's Liquors, like, I mean, it was like a laminated ID, man.
Yeah.
It was bad,
Damn.
but it passed there,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And so like it worked for
He
me.
just want to get paid.
Yeah, he was, yeah, I'd pay him in cash and he didn't care. Oh, it looks good enough to me, you know?
Yeah.
And so like we did that all through high school. So as soon as I started doing that, and like I went to, you know, I got into that realm where like I was providing alcohol for these high school parties and stuff. But then for me, it was like I was this shy kid for a lot of years. And when I got into that and like that went away, the shyness went away when I was drinking, I was like, oh, I'm never going back. Like, this is it. Like, I found the answer. I found the answer to like feeling like different than everybody else. I found the answer right here, you know? And so like that personality became everything going forward from that part on. And so I had this fake ID and I almost like developed into that persona. Like I was somebody else when I was drinking. And that just kind of carried over. So when I got into like the real world and I was like functioning as that alcoholic self, it was really, it was really, let me grab a drink real quick.
Oh, no, you good. You do your thing. I should have brought me some water myself.
I got one in there if you need it.
That's okay. Well, yeah, I'm okay for right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, I got into that persona in the personal world or in the professional world, and I was really successful at it. And so, but I knew, like, I had an awareness that like I couldn't pull that off forever. I was like 22 and I'm an alcoholic, but it's working for me and it's not that bad and I haven't had consequences. But I'm like, this isn't really sustainable. And so I take like a week off of drinking to kind of like sober up and whatnot and like get back to normal. And during that week, people were like, "Hey, are you feeling all right? Like, you good?" And I was like, and I actually felt really great, you know, because I wasn't drinking and stuff. I was like, no, I feel good. But I was a different person, right? I wasn't the same like jovial type person. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Right? Like if my sales numbers go down, people think that I'm weird. Like all of the stuff from like my childhood comes back, you know? Yeah. And like all those like insecurities and shit come back. And then I'm like, well, I'm just going to ride this out and see what happens. And so then I just kind of like followed that path and, you know, it leads nowhere eventually.
No, it doesn't. So is that what got you into fitness, is dealing with that?
Yeah. Okay. So that was like that was the big thing for me when I got sober was the gym. I mean, I didn't have, like, I had a little part-time job, and I would go to the gym and I'd go to the beach and I go to meetings and I meet with my sponsor, and like the gym, I was basically living at the gym. And so with that, like all that extra energy was just like, I'm just going to work out in the gym for 6 hours a day. 'Cause why not? You know, like,
yeah,
that's going to be my answer.
Yeah.
And for like a while it was like, I did it long enough where it was like, I got through a lot of shit because I had that as an outlet for all that energy.
Well, it's all mental health, right? I mean, for me, it definitely helps me like stay calm. Now I just, you know, I try to meditate as much as I can. I fail at times, but I try to meditate. And working out is definitely something that I try to do as well. And, you know, like I said, drugs has been a thing with some of my family members for a long time. My mother worked for a rehab center back in the day, back in the 1990s. Yeah. So I've been around all this shit. So, but what you do is incredible. And I really hope you continue, look, I can't even talk right. Continue to make a big impact in the community.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Seriously, man.
Yeah. So it's been a wild ride. Like it's, you know, the things that we're getting into now, with the big thing is the Department of Corrections, right? Mm-hmm. So we built these relationships now with probation and parole. And the big thing is trying to solve this issue of when people are getting released. And, you know, like a lot of it, like the substance abuse and jail and prison really go hand in hand. You know, like whether it's the reason they were locked up for drug charges or whatever or not, majority of the time that played a role in getting arrested in the first place. And so when people are getting out, I mean, what's happening is, and this is another one of those huge gaps in the system, right? It's not just people that I was saying coming out of the treatment centers that are in this transition period. A big portion of our population is people coming from jail and prison who are on probation and parole. And, you know, and so they get released and they might have some type of plan that they establish with a caseworker or something like that before they get out. But either way, they get out, and a lot of times they're releasing them at night, which is
that's
just
crazy.
insane in itself,
Yeah.
right? So they're getting out at night. They don't have a place to stay. They don't have money. They don't have a job. And they have this like laundry list of things that they're supposed to go do and people are supposed to check in with later on that week or something. And it's just like, well, see you later, And so it's like, even the next day, or even if they have somewhere to go that night or for a couple of days, it's like, okay, now I got a felony or maybe multiple felonies. So how am I going to get an apartment? I got a felony. So how am I going to get a job? Who's going to hire me? I know, but on top of all this, it's like, well, I know where I can stay. I know how I can get money. I know who I can call. And so it's like, what's keeping me from, it's like, even if they say, I'm just going to go back to that life for like a little bit until I can get my feet under me, just for a place to stay so I'm not homeless.
Right.
Then it's like immediate, right back in the cycle. And then it's like, well, then why do we have that relapse and recidivism rates that we have? Like, why are prisons packed? It's like that. It's like, so.
It's a big business.
It's a
billions.
Huge, it's $1 billion business.
Wow.
And so then it's like, even if somebody is motivated and wants to do the right thing, like the odds of everything lining up for them to get the opportunity to do the right thing are so minimally low. And the thing is that we've seen is it doesn't take a massive thing in that transition period to completely flip the script, right? If like we can have somebody pick them up, get them into a sober living house, and then the next day, that's the person that's going to help them update their resume, go interview at places that are going to hire somebody that has a felony, meet with their probation officer and advocate for them, help them go to the DHS office to get their Medicaid signed up or food stamps or whatever. If somebody's just like holding their hand for like those few days in those things, somebody's like, oh, I can do this. It's not that hard. And the growth within like a 30-day period between people when they get out is insane. Like the entire cycle changes. And it's because it becomes real to them at that point. When somebody's coming out of prison, if their entire life, their whole family system is involved has been locked up or has been, abusive, has been involved in drugs and crime and everything. And that's just been their whole family cycle and their whole world. For me to come in and be like, hey, you can just go over there and apply for a job. It's not real.
No.
Like it's not, there's no,
they don't talk about that part at all.
Yeah. There's no concept of like, it's a thing that they've seen people do, but it's not a reality of their world that they've ever actually experienced. Right. And people are like, oh, what do you mean they've never done it? It's like, they've never done it and they've never seen anyone do it. And so it's not a tangible thing. So a big part of what we're doing is just like, is getting people to experience it. As soon as you experience it and then it becomes a reality, then it's like, oh, that's all it is. Like I can do it. Now I can do it. Now it makes sense. But it's not, but if I'm just like, hey, I could write down like a 10-step process to become a billionaire. But if you don't know any billionaires and you've never ridden in a billionaire's car and gone to his office and sat down and had a conversation, you're never going to make $1 billion.
Mm-mm.
Like I'm never going to make $1 billion by like just knowing what the process is, unless it's just some freak thing, because it's not real. Like the lifestyle isn't real. It doesn't even make sense. And so all this is the exposure, right? That's the word I was looking for, like the exposure to that life. And as soon as they're exposed to it, then it's like, oh, it's not that far off. Like and then they get far enough removed from the old life. And then they're like, oh, that's all I had to do is like get rid of this. And now I'm involved here. And we just keep them in this new life, in this almost like a bubble, but still in the real world. Because they still got to work. They still got to have a place to stay. They still got to make progress in normal life things. And we're not just trying to lock them up for a year.
Right.
I mean, some people do need a higher level of care for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
So like it's definitely, I mean, there's going to be, and the thing
reason.
and the thing is like we do have resources for that too. So like we've sent people to longer term programs, and we actually have a guy that's going to probably start working for us later this spring.
Really? He's a former client?
Yep. A former client that came through and he had severe mental health issues going on. Like we had to take him to the crisis center multiple times, and we got him down to this place in Fort Lyons, and he was there for a year, became a peer coach, is now certified, has his own place down there, is doing all the things, and is about to come up on 2 years of sobriety. And so, but he needed a year. He needed a year to be like in that situation, to be like in their environment long enough. And so it's this coordination of resources too, right? We have this really unique position in the recovery world where we're not inpatient and we're not outpatient and we're not detox, but our coaches are able to work in such a way that they're like the connecting piece to all the resources.
Yeah.
Right. So they're connecting piece to residential and outpatient and parole and other treatment centers and therapists. And so, and they play this unique role of using their personal experience where they can just tell the people that they're working with, hey, here's just what I did. And not just here's what I did, but here's what I continue to do. So it's like, hey, we got this group on this night. I'm going to come get you and we're going to go here.
So
and then
I was going to ask you this, with potential clients, do you approach them or do they come to you?
They all come to us.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. So somebody referred them to you.
Yeah. So yeah, somebody referred, or now it's just been word of mouth. I mean, it just spreads because of the demographic that we deal with. One reason that I'm working, one of the reasons too for developing in the way we did is that like 12 to 15% of the 21 million people or so in America that need treatment services. So like the 12% actually get access to treatment. So they even get to the opportunity to go to a treatment center or outpatient or whatever. They even get a chance at help. And then a smaller percentage of them actually stay sober. Well, there's still another 88% out of 21 million people in America that need treatment. And that's what you see on the news, where all the homeless camps and everything else, like there's a massive need for it. And so like, that's our people. So like, that's who we're working with. And so like, as soon as, if people are like, hey, this is, there's an overwhelming need for it. And so we're not really going to ever run out. When we started though, and I got some grant funding to start up in Fort Collins, which was crazy in itself. I wrote a grant, no experience writing grants. I have no experience in nonprofit.
Is that right? Wow.
So I was never part of the nonprofit world. I was like, it was a total God thing on starting this whole thing.
Amazing.
So, so that was, to kind of circle all the way back to the beginning, in all that frustration when I was working in treatment, I had this day where I drove up to the mountains and I was just frustrated because we weren't letting people in because of the COVID restrictions. People were getting kicked out because they had symptoms of COVID. And the whole world was telling people, like, just go home and isolate. And I was like, you're going to tell a 22-year-old heroin addict to go back to their apartment and isolate? I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And it was just like, and everybody was like, well, that's what we have to do. I'm like, you're going to kill people. I was like, you're going to see suicide rates go up like you've never seen. You're going to see overdose rates like you've never seen.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to get rid of an entire generation of people. And, 4 years later, like, look what happened. Like, it's like I didn't need like a crystal ball to predict that future.
No, we saw that.
Yeah. And so at the time though, so I drove to the mountains and I'm just frustrated. So I'd go on this hike, like, with nothing. And I was like, I'm going to go talk to God and I'm going to figure, and I'm not coming back till I'm getting an answer.
Yeah.
So I go and then I go on this long hike and I'm out there and I climb up this mountain and I'm up on this like thing. And I'm just like, far enough out that I'm just having this, I guess you could call it a talk, but it's more like me just yelling at God. And, I was out there for a number of hours and then I just had like this overwhelming sense and vision of what God wanted me to do about it. And the answer that I got in that was, now go. I was like, but I don't know, I'm making, $35,000 a year working at this treatment center. I have no sober living houses. I have no savings accounts. I don't have, I don't have a license, like a clinical license or anything. And God's just like, go. And so I went home, go down the mountain, hike all the way back. And I'm like trying to justify not doing what God's telling me to do the whole way back. I get home and I Google search how to start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
that's
Nice.
that's what I started. I was like, I guess
It starts somewhere,
I
right?
just started somewhere.
Yeah.
And I told my roommate who he's a believer too, and I was like, you know what? Like I think I'm gonna quit my job and I'm starting a nonprofit. And he was like, all right.
Shit.
and he was my roommate. He was also my landlord.
Okay. So were you nervous when you did that?
No, that was
Really?
the thing about it. Was like I was so clear. Once I started that process, I was like, this is it. Like,
Okay.
this is what I got to do.
Right.
Working in treatment was never my intention anyway, man. If it was up to me, I'd still be in California lifting weights and surfing every day.
Shit.
That would be
Wow.
like, we were doing personal training. Like I got my personal training certification too. And we were running beach workouts and stuff. And like, that's the life.
Oh man. So when did you move to California anyway?
So I went out there for treatment in 2012,
Okay,
August of 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. So August 5th, 2012 was my sobriety date.
Wow. And then you came back here what year?
2015.
2015. Okay.
Yeah. So I moved back out here with the girl at the time, and she went to school at CSU, and my family was still living out here at the time. So my parents and my sister were still in Colorado, and since I moved back, then my parents moved to South Carolina. My sister's down in Dallas. So I came back. What the hell, man? What's this about?
We still talk to them on the phone, right? Or
Yeah.
FaceTime at least.
Yeah, no, I still we still keep in touch, but
That's
like,
good.
you know, I came back and then they left, but I love Colorado though.
It's different, right?
So yeah.
I like it a lot too. It's a different vibe. I meet some really cool people a lot of times.
Yeah.
I want to ask this though: have you ever dealt with any, I guess, fentanyl victims?
I mean, it's in everything, man.
Right.
Like that's the thing about it, man. It's like I was, you know, talking to Luke about it, and I was talking to I got a bunch of people that are. Yeah, I got a buddy out in California still, and he's really onto like the fentanyl awareness side of things.
Okay, good.
It's just in everything, you know, like because we're about the same age, man. Like when we were kids, you could experiment with drugs. Like you can't experiment with drugs anymore.
Oh hell no.
You know, you're getting. They're calling. So here's the thing, and my buddy Mike Fiore is out in California, and he talks about this all the time. There's no, like the term overdose. The term overdose was referring to people using heroin that started in the 70s, right? So people were using heroin when it was coming back from Vietnam and whatnot. A lot of drugs came back during that time. But the term overdose was like there actually was a safe amount of heroin that you could use and get high and not die.
Right.
Right. Because you're getting pure heroin. There was an amount that you could do. And so an overdose was just when somebody like actually used too much heroin. Now it's like you can take a half of like a tiniest pill that you've ever seen, the smallest amount, and like that much fentanyl can kill you.
It's scary.
And so like it's not an overdose anymore, it's a poisoning. Right? Because it's like, well, if that's an overdose, like what's a safe amount? Right? If like so it's like if a kid is taking that, like it doesn't seem to a kid or a teenager, like doesn't seem like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't seem like, oh, I overdid it.
Right.
And then they're dead.
That's scary, man.
And so it's a poisoning. And the way that my buddy Mike talks about it, like it's an extermination of this entire generation of kids because of like the terminology that's being used around it is like, it's a poisoning. And so, and now you're seeing it like put in everything. Like it's crazy that, so meth is supposed to get you up and fentanyl and opiates bring you down, but fentanyl's in meth. And fentanyl is in cocaine, and fentanyl is in, you know, probably different strains of weed. And fentanyl is in.
That's crazy, man.
It's just in. It's in everything. And so now it's like, okay, well, how do we educate kids and get kids to change a culture of even experimenting with drugs?
Yeah.
And like that's I don't have the answer to that yet. But it's like, I think the entire culture has to shift, right? As soon as kids start to, and I think. I do have hope for this next generation of kids. I think the kids that are in high school now are seeing a lot of the trends of the world. I think they're smart enough overall to really see what's going on and have like they've grown up in this really weird era of things from COVID through now. It's just like, I'd hate to be
God.
15 right now.
Man,
Are you kidding me?
Exactly. I would too.
I don't even I don't envy that at all.
No.
But I think that the generation right now, I really am actually hopeful for, because I think that they see it, and I think that what people don't realize, that kids have so much, and what kids don't realize, they have so much power to influence culture.
They do.
Like what kids say is cool is what's cool.
Right.
If 13 and 14-year-olds make it cool, you're going to see 35-year-olds doing whatever it is. Right.
Well, just like with the music, right? With celebrities, young people, they make the trends pretty much.
Right.
And then you have a lot of these celebrities that die from fentanyl as well. So, I mean, hopefully people will wake up from that eventually. I don't know. Mm-hmm. We'll see, I guess. It's a scary thing, though.
It is. It's one of those things where it's like how do I even want to put it? So back to, if it's economics 101, right? Mm-hmm. Supply and demand.
Right.
If there's a demand, there's always going to be a supply.
Absolutely.
Of anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter, like, why is porn such a big industry? Like, there's a demand for it. Like, the porn industry wouldn't be big if there wasn't a demand. Like, Facts. why can these girls make $200,000 a year on OnlyFans? Like, there's a demand for it. So if there's not a demand, then there won't be a supply. And so it's like, how do we get to this place where we're not trying to battle the supply? The problem with like government regulations and legislature and all these things is like, you can go after cartels and shit all day long, but like you're going to make some busts. But you know what? Cartels don't care if you bust 10 tons of fentanyl. It doesn't, like, it's a drop in the bucket. Like, they have so much more inventory than what you're doing here on the back end, that like busting the supply, great, you might have taken some off the street and you saved some lives, but how much more good could you do if you were getting rid of the demand for it, right? If you bring up, like, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So you bring up this underserved population of America, where it's like, that is low income housing, that's just like impoverished in every way. That's like the whole welfare system. And you're giving people opportunities and not just handouts, like a hand up and not a handout. And that's really what a lot of our program is based on, is giving a hand up. You start to change the entire system, because as soon as people start to do more and perform better and gain like a sense of self-worth and confidence and a sense of purpose and hope, and you start to create that, the demand for all these things goes away. Like, you're not going to eliminate it. No. Like, it's never, like, that's just not human nature. You're never going to eliminate it. But all this entire like lower level of society, you're going to bring them up and they're just not going to want to do it. And I think that's what kids are starting to see now, is like, with technology, is like they have access to do and be and become so much more, that it's like, why would I want to like mess with that? You know, like, why would I want to take that chance? And I think that cultural shift is starting to happen, but it's like, this entire range of just kids experimenting is still taking people out, and that's really a cultural shift.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So do you think that drugs should be legalized in general, since people will find a way to get it?
Yeah. So here's the thing about that. Like, I was never like against. What's crazy is they legalized weed after, like, the year after I got sober. I never bought legal weed. I was still buying from drug dealers before I got sober.
Right. Well, if you do now, you go to the dispensary now. Yeah. I don't trust the people on the street now. No.
So it's like I never got that experience with it, but I was never like against it because I'm like, it's weed, But the problem is that it's not weed anymore, right? You're getting stuff that like you're extracting wax and doing dabs and all these things, and like you're getting rid of. Like, the weed from, like, we were just at this conference where they were talking about the percentages and stuff. And it's like the THC levels in weed in the 70s was like, 8% or something. And now it's like just, you can get so 95% THC or whatever. And it's like where it's, one hit and you're in psychosis.
Yeah.
And that was because of this legalization of weed. There was no idea on what it would become. It's like, yeah, if you're smoking a joint that was from 1986, yeah, it's not going to okay, great. It's not the same as smoking a joint today.
Right.
It's not the same as edibles today. It's not the same as edibles being marketed to kids today. And so you have this snowball effect of what legalization does with no repercussions and no follow-up on the back end. You look at countries that are like Portugal, right? People always in the legalization of drugs thing, people always want to use Portugal as this example, who has decriminalized everything. They are across the board. I don't know what their stance is on fentanyl, but recreational drug use across the board. But their system is set up so that people have access to state-sponsored healthcare and the ability for treatment in the same way that they have access to drugs. So their system is set up where people have the option to choose. And as soon as they want treatment and they want help, it's available to them, and there's still a lot of negative consequences that don't get talked about on their side. That's still
sure.
what that looks like. But overall, that's how it works. Us, we're we just want to legalize and decriminalize drugs. And then they're and then they do it. And you look at places like freaking Seattle, and there's not a back end to that, right? There's not a back end to getting people in through that process into a place where they're getting the help that they need. So now you just end up with a bunch of people that are homeless on the streets with access to drugs that aren't doing anything and are just getting high. And it's well, what does that serve? And so this idea of legalization of weed was the concept is good, but as Americans, we got to take things to
extreme levels.
Extreme.
Oh God.
We have no this. And so, the cultural shifts is we don't we're not responsible enough as a culture to have legal weed.
We can't find a balance for some reason
right.
at all.
It's we need bigger and bigger and better and this and that and stronger. And it's if people could be responsible and accountable and disciplined, then that would be cool. But since we can't, and we've proven we can't, then it's we're like a kid that you're just giving too much candy to all the time, that his parents don't discipline him at all. And it's well, what do you expect to happen?
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Wow. No, you got a good point, man. Seriously though, good Lord. Well, do you think it'll change for the better one day? Or
I do. Yeah. That's what I mean by the kids that are coming up now is I really feel like I got a friend of my sister, one of her best friends has a teenager right now, and smoking weed to these kids is like an old person thing. It's old people do that. Old people smoke weed. Amazing. And these kids, she was saying she'll leave him and maybe I don't know for sure that he's just this one-off type of kid, but she'll leave him at home for a weekend and he doesn't throw parties, and he might have some friends over and they play video games and they don't get in trouble and
they
shit.
Are different.
Yeah, and so that's different. Where I'm we would have just destroyed everything.
Wow.
But I think that's what I mean. But I think this generation coming up has this capacity to really see what's gone on and be that doesn't make sense.
Right.
That doesn't make sense with where I'm headed and the opportunities I'm going to have. And so I was well, what about these Gen Zs and everything else? I'm I think there's the potential, that's the generation that turns some shit around. And what they haven't realized yet is it actually is on them to do it. We fucked it all up.
Yeah.
For whether we want to accept it or not, these last 3 or 4, 5 generations progressively went downhill. And now it's this is what it's come to. And now there's a generation where it's sorry guys, but it's on you now.
Right. That's true.
And nobody's coming to save you.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I was going to ask this. I was thinking, do you think that as far as with drug uses, do you think the economy plays a part in that and the social media?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to depression for people to get on drugs in the first place.
Yeah, we've been in this thing for a long time. um, you can just take something for it, right? Like that's how the opiate crisis started. From OxyContin, it was like, oh, you can just take a pill for that,
Right.
and so like that's how that's how this snowballed into all that to begin with, which now we're dealing with cleaning up when there's giving people a bunch of money, which we've been fortunate for. We've got a bunch of grant money that came out of that to be able to help. Like that's where our grant funding comes from. Yeah. So it's like almost like without that problem, we wouldn't have that. We wouldn't have the solution, but we wouldn't have as much of a problem. So is it? I don't know. So I guess the economy. It does. It's really just the way that the system is set up. It's like we're promoting keeping people on this government handout system. And my belief is that, yes, there is a demographic of people that are on disability and whatnot that need government assistance for sure. Most of those people don't have as much resources as they need anyway.
They sure don't.
And so there's this other demographic of people who's on those type of programs that have a capacity to be and do more than they're doing. And nobody has pushed them into that or made things challenging enough for them to strive for something more, right? Like there's an entire group of people that needs it, and there would be a plentiful amount of resources to help the people that need the help if other people weren't piling in on the system.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, is the economy? Yeah. But also, I mean, we live in America and you have so many, I mean, people are like, oh, it's the economy. It's like the economy doesn't really affect us that much. Like we like to think that it does, and it does affect gas prices and stuff and some programs, but overall, like anybody can, with technology and stuff now, anybody can go out and start a business tomorrow. Like it's not going to be easy. And like this, it's like doing this. Like I would not recommend entrepreneurship to anybody. Like this shit is hard.
It was like a 24/7 thing, right?
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, you just get kicked in the nuts all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you willing to like go through that? Are you willing to go through all? And that's the thing, is like I just have this in me where I'm just built that way.
Yeah.
And like I love listen and I grow in that direction. I do a lot of personal development stuff. I listen to a lot of personal development related people, and I read a lot of personal development type of books, and not just like self-help, but ways to grow business and grow myself and grow spiritually and
mindset.
Mindset and therapeutically. Like my therapist refer books to me. And so I'm always like looking for different ways to improve in that way and gain these skills. And then I do things like 75 hard, and I learn discipline, and I, the big thing is I surround myself with people that are winning. Like I don't surround myself with people like, because of what we do work wise, we're working with a population that we're trying to bring up. But my inner circle of people is people like, I don't hang out with people that complain about shit, right? Like nobody like people, yeah, they might bitch sometime about whatever that day, but overall they're not complaining about anything, and they're not victims to anything. And a lot of them have been actually victims at some point, but they're not victims on like this daily basis, right? Where like things are out of their control, and the conversations that we have are different. The conversations that we have are about what they're working on, where they're headed, what their goals are, what they're reading, who they are setting up things with, what their next move is going to be. Like all of these things where we're talking about going forward in life. And I think that in this lower demographic, it's like, this is like it should be like, you should just accept that you're in this class and just take the handouts that the government gives you. And then it's like, but you don't have to. Like, it's going to be hard, and it's going to be a lot of work to get out of that. But the system is going to work. It's going to feel like it's working against you. In a lot of ways, it probably is. But you have an opportunity right now with technology and everything else. Like, you can go do whatever you want to do.
That makes it so easy now.
Yeah.
Super easy.
Like I don't even know how do this type of thing if it was 1995.
Oh shit, yo,
You
can
know,
you
with-
imagine? You had to like probably like, a lot of books. Probably.
knocking door to door trying to
Yeah,
find drug addicts.
exactly. That would be hard. I mean, the internet was around, but it wasn't
Yeah.
like how it is now.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah, now you got a good point. Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is not easy. I mean, even with me doing this is
Yeah,
entrepreneurship. It's
Yeah.
not easy. I mean, I'm a one man band.
Yeah.
I do it all. But
and it's awesome, man. Like you've done what, like 40 some episodes?
Yeah.
Right now, right?
yeah, I did. Yeah, I do the music to the show. I do everything.
Yeah. And so I listen to guys like Eric Thomas,
Mhm.
right? And like, so they have this podcast. I don't know if you listen to it, called Secret to Success.
No, but I need to watch
You need to
it. I heard
do that.
about it.
It's good.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yep. But one of the things that they've talked about, and that's like Eric Thomas, top motivational speaker in the world. They did like 120 episodes before they even like caught on.
Wow, that's what it takes.
So
though.
I know.
Yeah.
And so it's like he already had a reputation, and it took him 120. So then it's like, okay, well, somebody thinks like, oh, I put out like 12 podcasts, and why am I not viral? And it's like, oh, you just got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it.
So let me ask you this: do they interview people, or they talk amongst each other?
Sometimes I have people on, but it's mostly themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mostly amongst each other.
So they share like advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Huh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You should do your podcast too.
I should.
Yeah, you really should, man.
Yeah.
You should make one. You got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience on what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's very incredible. I really hope that as society will take heed in what you're doing and make some impactful changes. I hope so.
Yeah. That's the idea, is like, as soon as people can see that, people think like to make a change, it needs to be some like massive thing that has to happen.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. And it's not. It's like, and who's the guy that talks about it? John Maxwell talks about it all the time. It's like, and Jim Rohn talks about it all the time. It's doing something, small things every day consistently over a long period of time. Right. So that's why the whole idea of making your bed every day is so huge. I started doing that in my second day sober because they'd made me do it in treatment. And I was like, this is stupid. And I still do it today. You get out of bed, you do that, you've accomplished something today.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you've accomplished something, it sets in motion accomplishing the next thing and the next and the next and the next. And then you are just in this motion of accomplishing things. And then by the time you get in bed at night, your bed's made, and it feels good to get into a made bed. Right? Like, it's not like your blankets aren't all over the floor. You're not like disheveled, and like, it's a good thing to do.
Right. It is. I mean, it's kind of like working out though, right?
Yeah.
In a way.
Right.
I mean, you do like a little bit of push-ups or dips, whatever, and then you start increasing more after a while.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty incredible. I got to check out that podcast because it got me thinking a lot more.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that I have a good circle as well. Because I'm really to myself a lot. I mean, I associate with people at times, but I hang out with myself a lot. To be honest, it's just peaceful that way.
I agree.
I get what I get. I guess
I like it too. Definitely more introverted.
I can't tell sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, then again, no, I can tell sometimes, but at the same time, you're very personable.
Yeah, and so like, but when I'm on, then it's like that, and I have like a 2 or 3 hour capacity, and then I'm like, I'm cool to go be on my own, watch Netflix or whatever.
So let me ask you this: how important is prayer to you when it comes to what you're doing?
Dude, it's a daily importance. Thing. Yeah, it's like my faith is so important in this whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So I was talking about, I didn't have any faith before. And so I really got involved in going to the church and everything else. So I'm at like 8-9 months of sobriety, somewhere in there. And I get baptized. And I didn't know, like, I knew about baptisms and I didn't. Like, my sponsor never really like told me the whole thing about baptisms and what it's all about and what it actually means. But they said that they were going to do them at this church that I was going to. So I rode my bike up there one night from the sober living I was at. I was like, I'm getting baptized. So I go in there and the church is just like packed. And I'm like, I didn't know that this was like a thing.
Yeah.
And so, I go and I get baptized, and it was an incredible experience. Number one, like I just felt so much lighter after I got out. And it was just like, I was on fire for it. Like I'm riding my bike home and like, I'm just, praising God and everything else. Get back to the sober living 2 days later. Just about everybody in that sober living, basically everybody in that sober living relapsed at once, including the dude that owned the house.
Really?
Right.
What? Wow.
So I had money for rent, And I wasn't going to give it to that dude because he was just taking rent money and going buying dope with it, right? So, and so I go and I bought a Jeep that I got off of Craigslist for like $650 or something for the cost of rent money.
Shit.
And then I was like, I'm just going to stay in this Jeep and figure something out. But, I'll just live in this, live in the Jeep. I'll go park at the gym. And I was like, it was going to be super temporary. And then it ended up being like 2 or 3 months that I lived in the Jeep.
Damn.
But I had a 24-hour fitness membership. And so I was at the gym all the time and I was working. I had a part-time, or it was between part-time and full-time job. I worked at this dog daycare, which was crazy in itself. Like it was my get well job. And so I'd go to work there and I love dogs, but I like hated that made me like hate. I was like, oh, this will be cool. And it was 100 dogs barking and pissing and shitting everywhere all day. And I was
That's a lot, man.
And so I was going to quit. So look at this as a side note. I was going to quit like 3 months into it. And I told my sponsor, and he's like, no, you got to stay there for a year because it's your get well job. You committed to it. Because that's a big thing in early recovery is like because I had this pattern, right? Especially in addiction of starting something and then quitting, right? So I would start a job, quit a job, or just not even quit, just stop going. That's how it worked at the bank. And a couple of jobs after that, right? Mm-hmm. So that was crazy. But so I'm working this job, and he's like, and so I was so mad at my sponsor, and I ended up talking to this old guy at an AA meeting, and he was like, well, here's the thing. It's like, where are you at? Like, what's the job that you're in? And I was just in the yards with the dogs picking up shit and stuff. And he's like, all right, well, can you do something else there? Can you move up? And I was like, yeah, you can do this where you're out giving them medications and feeding them. He's like, and then he's like, what else? And I'm like, well, then you can go to the front of the house and you can, do the computer work and like, interact with the customers and everything else. And he's like, all right, we'll go through all of that and then go on to something else. And I was like, all right, I'll do that. So I worked my way up right through this. And then I started like learning how to manage people and lead a team of people in this environment. And the reason that he said it like that was like, he's like, if you can't handle a $2 problem, you can't handle a $2 million problem, but you handle the problems in the same way. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I get that. And so like, I couldn't figure out how to deal with like people in a dog daycare that were all younger than me. I'm 20 years old. I'm picking up dog shit, and I'm like, I was so depressed and angry, man. I was angry. I had so much, like, I was talking to my therapist about that today. So much anger.
Yeah.
But I worked my way up and worked up out of it. And it took me like 1.5 years to go through that process. And then I quit and I moved on to working in a treatment center after that. I got another opportunity came up. So I was working there, and I was living in the Jeep, and I was going to Bibles. And so I started going to these Bible studies, like all around Orange County. So because I had a car. So I started going to find out where these Bible studies were. And I go to these Bible studies in Orange County because they had a spread.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Like I'd go, they had steaks and they'd have shrimp and they'd have pastas. Like,
man, some good stuff.
And they'd be at people's houses. They'd be at the church. And like every place I go to, like, so I was eating good every night of the week. But it really got me, the most important part of all that, it got me into community and it got me into scripture. And people started teaching me about scripture, and I started actually paying attention to the Bible and actually reading and being around people that were praying for me and learning how to pray and all these things. And so I was immersed in it like long enough where I was like, man, and it started to like really catch on. And so I started to be like, you know what? I had this realization where I'm like, it was so weird. It's like, you think that at the time I thought like one of the worst things that could happen to me was I'm going to be homeless. If I'm homeless, then like, shit, everything is going to go back to shit. And might as well go back to drinking and drugging. Cause like, why not? And then I was homeless, but I was doing all these things. And then I was like, God's got this, right? God's got me even in this. I feel good. I'm safe. Like I feel protected. I'm fed. I'm at the gym every day. I can go to the beach. I'm working. And I was like, and I had this realization where it's like, I don't need anything to be okay. Like if you take everything away from me and all I have is this relationship with God, I'm going to be all right. And so from like that moment on, like my whole paradigm switched, because it was like, I think a lot of people, because I operated for a long time in this like fear mindset where it was like, man, if I lose, I don't want to, it's like a scarcity mindset. If I lose everything, like, I don't know what I'll do. I'm like, well, if I lose everything, I think like I have this internal belief now that if I lose everything, I'm still going to be all right. And so it has taken away the barrier to go try whatever I want to try.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Like to try something and fail, like in starting this, I said I got grant money and everything to help start it. And we bill out Medicaid and stuff now. But getting that ball rolling in that process was, dude, it was like, I mean, it took a year before we were getting payments on it. And so it's like, we've ran out of money, and now we're good and we're finally at the stable level. But we basically ran out of money 3 different times in, a little over 2 years of doing this. And it was like in those moments where it was like, God's going to come through. I know it. He's going to come through because he always comes through. And one of the times, like, man, we were out of money for like 9 days.
Damn.
And I would say that, like, I have like everybody on my team is believers too. And so, and we're not a Christian organization, but we're all Christian. And that's such a major part of it. But like everybody that's here now on my team, like things like that happen. And they're like, yeah, I believe that God's going to come through too. And then it does. We got to check. We were basically dead broke. Got a check from Medicaid for like $20,000. 2 weeks later, had a grant come through for like $50,000, and now we're back.
That's so amazing.
And it's like, and it was like in those 9 days though, God was like, okay, do you trust me? Do you, like, you say that you believe, you go to church every Sunday and you sing the songs and you say the words, but when it comes down to the actions, like, do you? Like, are you willing to like have everything gone and you're still going to have faith, or are you going to go try and figure it out on your own?
Wow.
And I was like, and so it was like in those moments, am I going to talk about it or am I going to be about it? And so I go to them, I'm like, I believe that he's going to come through. You start questioning it at like day 6.
For sure.
6, 7, 8. We're like, yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Try to start like pack my bags just in case. But like that's when it's like that's where it is,
Yeah.
And then he comes through, right? Then God comes through, and then it's like, and then it just it just sends that level of faith to another level, because now it's like, I know that in any situation, like, it might not work out the way I want, but it's going to work out in his way in the appointed time. It's like I heard I don't remember where I first heard it at, but it's like when you pray for something, God releases that package, right? He sends that out. When you pray, it's released. It's my job though, because people are like, well, I'm just like, I prayed on it, so now I'm just gonna like sit here and watch Netflix and see if he answers the prayer. It's like, that's not how it works. He releases the package, and it's my job to be at the right address when that package arrives. Mm-hmm. And it's going to arrive in its appointed time, right? It's like, what is it like? I can't remember I'll have to think of the scripture, but there's a scripture that's like, it's going to arrive. It might take a long time, but it'll arrive in its appointed time. Right. And so it's my job to be at that address when that happens. And so I have to do the things that are required to be there. And now I might make it to the address that the package is going to, and now I'm waiting for the package. Doesn't mean that I'm just going to sit on the front porch and wait. I got to be actively waiting, right? I got to be doing things, but I still need to not move from that location. Because if I'm like, you know what, it's never coming, and I sell the house and I leave, and then the package arrives, and then I'm like, see, God never blesses me. Right? God never blesses me. I guess that, my prayers never get answered. And it's like, well, it's because he left. Like your faith wasn't there.
Right.
And so it's like, the more that I wait there, and then the blessing happens, and sometimes it's not the answer. Sometimes it's just like, Yeah, sometimes I don't like the answer, but it doesn't matter if I like the answer or not. That's not the problem. That's not the point.
Right.
And it's like, who was it George Strait that had the song Unanswered Prayers?
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
Yep.
Right. That was one of our guys in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
Your country music guy.
Some of it was okay. My uncle worked for Kenny Rogers back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah, he's working at the country club, and he loved him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy. Great guy. Nah, this is awesome, man. I was gonna ask this. Okay, so with your schedule being the way it is, how do you find time to read?
So one of the things that I picked up on from doing 75 hard is reading 10 pages a day. And so I haven't been doing it as much recently, but one thing about doing that program, and people want to consider 75 hard this like fitness program to lose weight and stuff. It's not. It's a mental discipline program. It's just a discipline program really overall. And part of that is reading 10 pages a day. So when I get into that of reading 10 pages, that's doable. Right? And you'd be surprised how fast you go through a book if you do 10 pages a day. Right? Like 10 pages, if I'm reading a 200-page book, because I'm not reading like dictionaries.
Oh, no.
I'm hoping that they got pictures. Like a couple of charts and graphs, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I do audiobooks nowadays.
Yeah.
Just because my schedule is so crazy.
But there's something about reading the physical book. And
right.
People are like, well, what about Kindle? I'm like, there's something about the actual physical book.
Well, it's like holding an album, right?
Yeah,
like reading the credits and looking at the artwork.
Yeah.
You can't duplicate that. Well, replicate it, I mean.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah. And so it's like, I go through a good amount of books a year just doing that. And it's like I haven't been on it. I haven't been good about it recently. And one of those reasons that I'm justifying was like I was reading this therapy book and it got to a part that was really painful for me. I'm like, I'm going to just put that to the side.
That's okay. You're human. It's okay. It's cool.
I know. But then I use that as like, I don't want to do it.
Right.
And then I'm like, then I have an excuse. I'm like, no, I just need to do it.
So prayer and therapy is really helping you a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
And like so many relationships come from that. I go to a church. I go to Genesis Project up here, and Pastor Rob, he's a guy he's got a long white ponytail, rides a Harley, and he's the pastor of that church.
Okay.
So Genesis Project. So it used to be the strip club in town. It used to be the Hunt Club.
I remember that. I never been there, but I remember that.
He says, I know. He's like, you wouldn't see my picture on the wall. It's like, number one customer.
I probably never been there.
Gold star. but that church that building got sold to the church. So it was like that church was like 6 months old when I moved to Fort Collins, and I went to Timberliners, the big church, and I'm like, this is cool, but like it's a mega church type atmosphere.
Yeah. And
I saw a flyer for that, and so I went there, and it was just Pastor Rob's small congregation. And they're talking about it being the old strip club. And I was like, it was just barely not a strip club. Like they still had like the hole in the ceiling where the pole was, because it was still the same stage. Yeah. And the sound booth was the sound booth, but for a worship band.
Amazing.
But through him and all of that, I got started with building so about a year into it, a recovery ministry called Restore. And we still run that on Friday nights up there.
Okay.
Now we were doing this like 12-step based recovery. Now we've kind of changed it and just do an open recovery meeting on Friday nights. And that's been awesome. But he gave me the opportunity to get involved with the church doing that. And over the time, like he's been such an awesome mentor for me overall. And just like that church in general. And that church is the reason that people go there is it's a church for people that don't feel welcome at other churches.
Oh yeah.
Like a church so the congregation is just a mix of everybody. Like, people that have been in churches since that are 70 years old and they are looking for like a normal church, and people that are bikers, and then people that are in the trailer park behind the church, and then, addicts, and just a whole, and just middle class, everything. So is it pretty packed? Overall? Yeah, okay. It is. And it's really like, and so it's grown from that small and just keeps expanding, but it still has like a family atmosphere to it,
which is very important. I think. Wow. Because I've been in churches before. I ain't been in church in a long time. Well, I did go, let me see, a couple of months ago, I got invited. But before that, I have been in churches where I didn't feel comfortable at because I didn't have a certain kind of shoes. I didn't have a certain kind of outfit or whatever. It just like just superficial things. Yeah, that's what I hate, especially being from the South. You know, just the Bible Belt. It can be a little crazy sometimes.
I bet. I've never been to churches down there.
It's different. It's definitely the churches here is way more laid back. I think.
Is it church where it's like church is like 4 hours or 5
hours?
Oh
Lord, yes. Oh my God. Yes.
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I have the stamina for that.
No, man. No, I'm not knocking it. The people that go to that, but to me personally, I just can't do it.
Yeah,
it's too long. I got stuff to do.
Yeah.
I gotta do lunch. I gotta eat. I gotta do something.
Right.
Prepare for the next day. Because Sunday's my meal prep. I had to cook. I gotta cook for the week.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I'm screwed for the whole week.
I hear that.
I don't want to stay up all night cooking and then trying to work out and then work and and train people and things like that. Yeah. So my schedule's crazy. So Sundays is a perfect day for me to do that stuff for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I went on church on a Saturday. Though. I got invited for that, and then I met a couple. This older couple, Milt and Marcy, that's their name. They invited me to a church. I went there twice. I met their daughter. Mm-hmm. When I walked in, they was like, "Oh, you must be Patrick." I'm like, "How do you know who I am?" So they family friends came up to me and everything. It was a good atmosphere. Everybody was very accepting and it was very warm and cool little place, cool spot.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So the church that I got involved with out there was Saddleback.
Saddleback. Where is that?
So Rick Warren, you know the pastor Rick Warren is like Saddleback Church is basically like a mega church. Mm-hmm. He wrote the book Purpose Driven Life, and so I didn't know who he was at first, but I mean the church out there is like a college campus that's in Irvine, and so they have multiple campuses around. I went to the one in San Clemente, but he showed up at that camp at the San Clemente one day, and there was just like this aura about him, and one thing about that guy is like he will give everybody a hug. Like he is the most like warm and welcoming person.
He's full of love. Huh?
He is. And his like if everybody in the church wants a hug from him after service, like he will hug everybody.
Yeah.
He's actually stepped down now, so he's older and he's passed it on to somebody else. But great guy. And so when I was there and I didn't know who he was and I was like worshiping in church and he was like standing next to me. And then he goes up and starts preaching, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's Rick!" And I was like, "Who's Rick?" Which is the guy that was standing next to me.
Yeah.
But that was like my exposure to like that type of. It was like, oh, church people aren't all like the them people.
Right.
Like there's this people that, especially that are in that. Where he was like a dude in blue jeans and Converse shoes that was giving people hugs. Back. Just a normal guy.
Yeah, normal. Yeah.
He wasn't in a suit and tie and all that stuff, and
so he's not like super judgmental at all.
No, and he wasn't like that. He's not like that typical mega church pastor where he's flying in on private jets and stuff.
Like Joel Osteen and Creflo Dollar and people like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But they got security and jets and limos and all kinds of stuff.
I know, that's crazy. I saw. I remember this guy Creflo Dollar. He actually was trying to get his congregation to donate more money to buy a second jet. I'm just like, dude, you got the first one. You got is like $60 million, man.
Who are you taking on the jet?
Right. Like, what do you need, man? Jesus. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. Those kind of things kind of steered me away when I kept seeing those things. So, but I definitely have faith. I try to pray. I don't pray as much as I should, but I definitely try to have faith a lot. Even if I'm feeling depressed, I still try to have faith. Try to get through the day.
Yeah.
Because life is a bitch. It can be.
Yeah. So were you raised that way? Like were you raised in church?
Well, yeah. Like my mother, rest in peace, my mom, but she was into church a lot. And when I was like 10 years old, that's when I stopped going because it was just so much going on at that time. Just family stuff and the church we was going to at the time. Instead of like praying for us, it's like they were gossiping about our life. Things that was going on, so I stopped going. Well, she gave me an option to not go, and then I went again when I was like 13 or 14, and then the church got sold to a hair salon, and then I stopped going. Then I go like every so often people invite me, I go, but I just feel like I just try to pray. I try to be a good person, not to say the best or whatever. I'm not a saint at all, but I try to be a good person. I try to honor my word with people and also be brutally honest, even if people don't like it. At least you know where I stand and how I feel about certain things. Because today I had this woman in my vehicle, one of my clients, she said, "Yeah, my nails look bad." I said, "Yeah, they do." And she got mad. I said, "You said it." I just
be careful.
I know, but I can't help it though. I rather if you know how I feel than for me to lie to you.
Right.
You know, even if it make me look bad, it's like whatever. It is what it is. You know. So yeah, that the church thing is definitely like a part of me. I just don't go unless I'm invited. I go, but I just try to be the best person I can be.
Yeah.
Because I met people that went to church and they was doing some heinous shit.
Yeah.
They wasn't who they say they were at all. So I was like, I just rather just focus on just doing the best that I can to, you know, bring good energy to people and just try to be as personable as much as I can. So that's where I stand with that.
Okay.
I said maybe I may turn around when I get older or whatever. Yeah. Maybe I may. Who knows? I may make a full circle around, but I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see how life goes.
Yeah. Well, the church isn't just the building. You know?
Right. It's not. It's in here.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's the community.
Right.
Right. So like if you're being like Jesus to everybody in the community, like that is the church. That's being part of the church.
Right.
It's like, but the importance of Sunday is connecting with everybody else that is doing the same things. Right. So yeah, finding the right one is hard.
Oh yeah, it is. It's super tough. Good Lord. So with your program, do you kind of not enforce, but do you mention church?
Yeah, so for everybody that's in our sober living houses, one of the requirements of being on the scholarship funding is going to a church service. Now, we go to Genesis Project. The women go to Vintage City because our women coaches are really heavily involved with that church also, and they're also supportive of recovery community. So it's a requirement to go to church, but they can go to any church or any type of spirit. So if they are Jewish and they go to temple, or they're Buddhist and they want to go that route, or whatever it is, they have to be doing some type of spiritual service once a week.
Okay.
So whatever that looks like, it's just easiest for most people to, and we do get pushback from people at first. And really my big part of it is I want them to be in that environment on a Sunday morning, because what were we all as addicts doing on Sunday mornings prior to this? You know, we weren't in this environment. And I know that if they go to that environment and their idea is that people are going to judge them and whatever, and then they go there, and even if they sit outside, I know that at Genesis Project, so you could sit out at the table outside and not come inside, somebody's going to sit at the table with you before you leave. Like whether you invite them to or not, like the odds are somebody from the church is going to be like, hey, how you doing? And they're just going to sit down and start talking to you.
Yeah.
And like that exposure is what I want to get people to, where it's like, here's what it's like to be in a good environment intentionally. And the message that you're going to hear there isn't going to be like fire and brimstone. It's going to be something good. And a lot of times it's going to be something convicting. And it's going to be like, oh, I didn't really like that. It's like, yeah, you weren't supposed to. It's supposed to convict something in you that you need to change.
Right.
And that's why I go to it, because like, you know, I know a lot of scripture and I still pick and choose what parts of the Bible I like.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah, most people do that. But like it doesn't, and I tell people this all the time. It's like, well, my foundational belief is that the Bible is truth, right? Like that's a foundational belief of being Christian, is like what's in that book is truth. Now, whether I agree with it or not is insignificant. My feelings on the Bible don't matter when at the end of the day, it's truth. So if it's convicting me, it's on me. It's not on God. It's not on the Bible to change.
Right.
It's not on the Bible to adjust to what I feel like I need in my life. It's not about me. And so it's getting people to that point where it's like, okay, it's not always about me. I think that's a big thing that's in all addicts across the board. And that's be a very agreeable statement, is like, it's not about me.
I mean, isn't that humans in general?
Yeah, that's
we all do that. Yeah. I mean, I do the same thing.
Right.
I had to check myself. Big time.
Right.
So I was going to ask you this: what would you tell 18-year-old Brian if you meet him right now? What would you tell him?
That is a good question, because the way that things have turned out, I wouldn't change anything.
Okay.
And for a long time, I would have been like, hey, you need to turn your shit around, and you need to like really focus in on school, and you need to, you know, put down the bottle and everything else. And I'm like, But now with where it's gotten to, it's like, man, like I wouldn't be who I am without it.
Right.
And so like, and I know, and I would almost be scared to go back to that and try and change anything, because a lot of the stuff that I've worked on that's related to like the self-worth and shame things and all of these insecurities that I had as a kid and growing up. I don't know where they would have came out and like what it would have taken for me to have to work on them, or if I would just be some like super introverted guy that's not doing anything and is just like depressed and anxious. And I don't know who that person would be if I didn't get pushed into the environment because of the drugs and alcohol.
Right.
You know, it's like it forced me into it. And so and that's how I change now. I don't change unless something's like really painful.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like, you know, guys, we got a high pain threshold.
We do.
Like physically and emotionally.
Absolutely. We do.
Right?
We do a lot of shit.
Yeah.
People don't realize that.
Yeah. And it's like, but you shouldn't. Like, you should have the ability to, like, when there's a pain point, you should know that that's a pain point, which means now you should change something.
Right.
But I don't change until it's like,
I know,
until I'm, missing a leg or something.
Do you think this, the way we design, you think this society, why we like that? The way they view us as men.
Yeah. I mean, there's that. And I think like a lot of that it's valuable, right? It's important. Like you shouldn't be like, you should be a strong man. Like you should be a strong protector man. Like you should embody that role. And it's possible to have the dichotomy of both sides. I think so if we go from scripture, blessed are the meek. The people confuse the term meek with weak, and meekness is not weakness. Meek is referring to, especially in that time, a soldier who chooses to keep his sword sheathed, like in the cover. So keep his sword sheathed when he has the opportunity to be violent. So he's a trained warrior, a trained soldier in full gear, decides like, I have the opportunity to use my sword to end this right now, and I'm choosing not to. Like, but I have the capability. I have the capacity to be violent, and I'm choosing not to be violent. To work this out a different way, right? To take a different path, to be, say, empathetic or compassionate or communicate and connect with somebody. But if you push me, I have the ability to do what I need to do to defend myself or to be violent. And so like that, like I think we've lost that version of what masculinity is.
Yeah.
Right? We've gotten to this like thing where talking about toxic masculinity is like, is there such thing? Yeah, there is. When you're talking about rapists, you're talking about like, people, serial killers and things like that are extreme levels, but you can't talk about that as a man being a man, right, and a masculine role as being toxic, when that's the whole idea of it. And so now we've got this weird, we have this weird cultural shift of feminine men because of this push for toxic masculinity. And it's like, there's a need for a man to be a protector, to be a provider, to be like, there are these roles that are specific to what we're designed by God to do.
Right.
Right. And so we've, kind of lost that overall. And I think that it's coming back, but it's also creating like a conflict.
Oh man, it's a big conflict.
And the big part of the problem is like, here's a big part of like that problem is like the guys that are protectors and providers and masculine men, there's another group of men who are starting to see that, right? Or like, they might have been more like caught up in the feminist side of things and tried to not be a toxic man. And they're starting to realize like, oh, I shouldn't be this guy anymore. And the problem is they're trying to be more masculine again. They're trying to like learn this stuff, and they're almost being like pushed away by these masculine guys. Like they're being outcast from it because they were like that. And there needs to be this thing where it's like, hey, now you've woken up, for the actual real term of woke,
Right.
not how it's been like changed to use, but like now you've seen, and now, hey, come be with us. You're welcome here. And like that's not happening in the same thing. It's like we want guys to be like this, and they're not being accepted for it.
Right.
And so there needs to be this mix of both, where you can be this guy and be compassionate for this guy, and have that kind of like dichotomy as a person.
Man, it's such a weird dynamic though. When like you said, I see it on. I'm like, man, I just think to myself, man, geez. Wow. Yeah. I don't know what to say about this stuff, man. I just hope that eventually it will come in full circle.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't, it's so much influence these days. And you got all these different like podcasts spreading all this different misinformation and all this crazy philosophy, and people, they listen to it. They feed off of it. So yeah. And I don't know. It just, I don't even know what to say about this stuff, man.
Yeah. It's interesting because you're having like men that get, and it's going along with the OnlyFans thing and all these cultural things that are just like outside of normal relationship. And like, and by all means, like, I'm not knocking anybody for making money. If I can make $200,000 showing my ass on OnlyFans,
that's what I'm saying. Show my feet or something. Right. Yeah, why not?
but culturally, like what it's doing is like you're creating this group of guys who like worships these women, and then they're like, I'm not the toxic guy. Like fuck those guys. Like they suck. And then they're becoming like a best friend to the women, and they're getting in there, and these women are getting in relationships with these type of guys. And I'm not any relationship expert. I'm actually like got a long ways to work on that stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to this, is like they're getting in relationships with women, are getting in relationships with these type of guys, and then they are not realizing why they're not attracted to them. And so then they're like cheating on their boyfriends with this toxic masculinity guy. And it's like, well, why are you doing that? This is the guy that you wanted, the man of your dreams that was going to like do everything for you. And so it's created this dynamic where it's like, they're saying, don't be a toxic masculine man, but I'm going to go sleep with a toxic masculine man and not you.
It's backwards, man.
And so it's like the cultural shift has to be in men and women, where we start to just acknowledge like, hey, here's the reason for it. The reason for it is like we're designed for certain roles.
Right.
You know, like, and that doesn't mean like, hey, this is your box, get in the box. It's like, no, like this is how people connect and work harmoniously together.
Absolutely.
This is the way that it is. And like, that's a godly design for that.
Right.
And so it's like, if we want to push against, we can push against God. Like God gives us that ability, right? Like people are like, well, why does bad things happen? It's like, because we have free will. We don't have to accept God. We don't have to accept his love. We don't have to accept these things. Like we can choose not to. Life is going to suck. Like one way, so here's the thing, like life is going to be hard, whether it is hard because we choose it to be hard and it's just going to beat us into the ground, or it's going to be hard because we're pursuing something and we're having faith that God has our best interest in heart. We're going to have to make sacrifices and go through suffering the same way that Jesus did. If we want to live a life of Jesus, people are like, oh, live a life of Jesus, and it's supposed to be like this pink cloud of happiness.
And it's not
realistic. It's not that. It's not what it means at all. It means sacrifice and suffering and pain and hurt for the glory of God.
Right.
Right. And so in that is the fulfillment of it. Right. Like I know that I've gone through a lot of shit and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, but I know that I feel fulfilled at the end of every day.
Yeah.
And so like, that's the outcome of it, is that, but we get to choose it.
Right.
And nobody gets forced to do it. I mean, I guess there can be,
I guess it depends on
I guess it kind of depends.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation that you're in. But then it's like, then you see these other parts of the world, man, where it's like, and I would really like to go do more traveling because I haven't really done that much.
Me too.
But in other parts of the world where people are actually dying for their faith, like actually, it's like somebody's like, if you say that you're Christian and you love Jesus, I'm going to shoot you in the head. And they're like, I love Jesus. And then they're, and they're actually dying for it. It's like, that is faith.
Yeah.
Right. People are like, oh, that's crazy. It's like, no, like that's really happening. And it's like,
that's been happening for centuries.
Right. And I have this thing like, well, I don't know if we're going to have enough money for this fun activity this week. I'm like, dude, I got to at least have that much faith.
Right. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
Like, I got to have faith that I can make a payment on my truck.
Right. You have a passport though, right?
I do.
Okay, me too. I just haven't used my passport.
Yeah, I actually think I might need to renew it.
Oh, okay.
I might be up on it.
Yeah, it was like for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just got mine back in November.
Yeah. Where was the last place you went?
I didn't go anywhere. I supposed to had a job out in Canada for a month, but my passport came a little too late, so I had to miss out on it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an IT job, like not help desk, but it was like a database for the hospital out in Canada. And in a way, I'm glad I didn't go because it was so cold. I did not want to deal with that. No, I hate how cold it gets. But I was going to go back to the relationship thing you was talking about as well. I think social media is playing a big part in that as well, because you got the people pushing this message where people don't need nobody. Not to say we need people just because, but we do need each other to build community. We need each other to just for resources. We need that.
Yep.
And nobody do nothing by themselves. Even when it comes to building an empire, somebody had somebody behind them with them. So it's such a I don't know, a weird thing. And of course, you got the AI, and you have the sex dolls. That's becoming a real thing.
We saw a thing about that at this conference in Orlando last year. Man, that's wild.
Really?
Yeah.
With the dogs?
We didn't go to it, but they were doing a thing. I don't know. I don't think they were presenting on, but they were talking about the impact that it was going to have on humanity. I think
it's population control. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I really feel. I don't know if it's true, but that's how I feel. It just makes sense to me. Yeah. It's really weird out here, man.
Well, if you go back, so like one thing you were just talking about is the aspect of like not needing anybody. And so you grew up in Atlanta.
I grew up outside of Atlanta.
Outside of Atlanta.
But then I moved to Atlanta after a while.
So in the South, so that would have been what, in the late 80s, early 90s when you were coming up.
Yep.
So like that was when like crack got to be a big thing.
Was
that a big problem?
Oh, it was bad. My mother worked for a rehab center back then.
Okay.
And one of her clients I met, she was a prostitute, and she she died of AIDS at the time. She was sharing needles. So yeah, it was really a really huge thing.
Yeah. And so the thing about that is like that was like now what we've come to find out is like the government did that.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a thing for a long time, and now they're just like, yeah, we did that.
Yeah. And
then we're just going to ignore it. But the idea is when it comes to like this idea of creating this idea that people don't like, you don't need anybody, was what that did is take a lot of in these like lower income areas and whatnot, took a lot of men out of the household.
Facts.
Right? Specifically black men out of the household.
Facts.
And other minorities too, for that matter.
Yeah.
But took them out of the household, created a single mom household, put them in these for-profit prison penitentiaries, and then told the women, you can do this on your own. And now, and the government's going to help you.
Right.
The government, just rely on us. You don't need him because we're going to lock him up, and you and your son, daughter, whoever, or multiple kids, you'll be okay because we're going to take care of you. And it's like that mentality is what we're seeing now. What, like 4 generations later, 3-4 generations later.
Absolutely.
It's like now we're seeing the actual fallout of that. When it's like, this is everybody goes to prison because like that's what we've done for three generations. Like, why wouldn't we go to prison? Well, it's like, cause that's not how it was, And so it's like, I think, I mean, this would go way down another rabbit hole, but there was a point in time when we had JFK and Martin Luther King in power at the same time. Coincidentally, both of them got assassinated. That would be it's a rabbit hole for another day. But like we were at a crossroads in America where like true unity was a thing, where it was like the American family and this whole idea that was coming up after World War II through the 50s and 60s through civil rights and all these things. Like it was actually coming to a place where like Americans were at this point of unity, and then the leaders got assassinated.
Well, you had the Poor People's Campaign that Martin Luther King was promoting as well, which he definitely let people know, like, you getting fucked as well. He didn't say that word, but you're not getting paid as much either.
Right, so, right. And so like it was the process was there to actually change. And then they get assassinated, and then you have this freaking crazy mess through the 70s, and then let's just give them a bunch of drugs, put liquor stores and abortion clinics on every other corner. And then it's like, you don't need a man, rely on me, take these medications, whatever it is, and we're going to put him in prison for a couple rocks of freaking crack.
Yeah.
And not give any form of treatment, just so kids don't do drugs.
Right.
And now you're seeing like the outcome of that, where it's like, it's still this thing now where it's like, you can be, and I'm not saying like you can't be, but like a powerful single mom or a single woman, it's like, you can.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. And there's amazing single moms. Now, would it be better? Like, is it a cultural thing that led to that? You know, like I don't know if you're on any like dating apps at all, but
I'm not.
And I go on and off of them and whatnot, but it's like so many single moms that I'm like, and that's a failure of men. Like, that's not a knock on women. Like, that's a failure of men not being men and creating children and being in marriages that they like.
I think it's a little bit of both. Because some women I know, they pick certain kind of guys. They know the dude's no good, but then they be surprised when he bounces. I'm like, I said, you knew what kind of dude he was, so why you even like procreate with this man?
True.
You know what I mean? I'm not exempting him either. Like, he should be held accountable as well. But it's like, at the same time, your body's your temple. You need to be aware about who you let inside you.
Yep.
You know, that's real shit. So, and it affects the kids. And sometimes how people conduct themselves is like, your kids see that. And they got to grow up eventually. They're gonna hear about it. Yep. And sometimes they end up getting bullied from that. So yeah, I don't know. It's just it's nothing new, but it's just, I don't know. It's crazy to me. And the social media thing doesn't make it any better, I don't think.
No, it makes it culturally accepted.
It does. It magnifies even more, spreads rapidly like a forest fire. Yeah. So I don't know.
And then you know, guys, like, both of them think like, oh, it's like relationships and marriage. Like, you don't see marriage. Like, I mean, what's the divorce rate now?
It's ridiculous right now.
And so it's like, there's no sanctity in that anymore. It's like, I'm not married, but I know that, like, if that were the case, like, that to me is like very. And this, I guess, this is my justification of also like not being married. Okay, go ahead. So I'm justifying my own shitty behavior too. I agree. Go ahead. So it's like, if I'm not married, it's not a problem, right?
Right.
That's how we're gonna justify it. So don't look at me as the relationship expert. These are just views.
It's just your opinion.
It's just my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So it's like. I don't even know where I was going to go.
You say you wasn't married.
Yeah. I don't even know.
I mean, I guess for me, like, I don't see. They don't sound messed up. Not to say, I mean, I'm open to it, I guess, but at the same time, I don't really see the benefit of being married.
Yeah,
I don't. Especially if you get married to the wrong one. It's like, you're gonna take everything I got.
Right.
Not to say, I'm not talking back. I know plenty of people that's married. They're doing great. But it's just the things that I see, I'm just like, oh my God, like, I don't even want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's somebody that's on the same like path that I'm on, right? Like, it's hard even for me to like find people that I'm really interested in dating.
Right.
Right. Because, like, number one, like, I have this workaholic tendency, and like, we're 2 years into this. So like, this does consume a lot of my time. But it's like, when I'm also working a lot on myself personally, spiritually, and therapy and everything else. But I'm like, I'm growing. And I don't know if you've been in a relationship where like you're growing and they're not.
Oh
like,
yeah.
it's never gonna work like that.
Or I've been in situations where I was too much.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Just because I was different. Like I was just too different. Because whatever image they had in their mind about me, I was that, but beyond that as well. Just because I went through a lot in my life, but I also hold myself accountable. I've done therapy myself, and I'm very transparent. I'm very honest about a lot of stuff. I said, look, you need to take that off. That look horrible. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna like, oh baby, that look good. No, like that look bad. Like take that off. Why you wearing that? You know what I'm saying? That's me. That's how I am. I can't help it. I'd rather for you to be mad than to go out there looking crazy than be really mad because I ain't saying nothing. You know what I mean? So I've been in a situation like that for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and now it's also too. I think like social media and just I think the media, not just social media, but TV, that puts this fantasy thing in people's head. They want this perfect mate, and that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like you might, everybody had their own faults. Like nobody's perfect at all, and that's what hinder a lot of people. I think
that's what falls. I think that's why I fall into that category probably too. Like I think in my head, part of my justification of it is like I'm doing all this stuff, and so the person that I would actually be in a long-term relationship with and commit to in a marriage doesn't exist. Because I'm like, they'd have to be absolutely perfect.
Right.
And then I'm like, but that doesn't make sense, right? Like, that's insane. It's insane to think that somebody else is perfect. But in my head, like, that's my justification. Well, I guess they're not perfect, so it's not going to work for me.
Yeah. No, and it's okay. I mean, at least you admit that. It just, so many people think like that. And it's like, it's just not realistic. Yeah. Like the movie thing, it's not real.
Well, they don't show what happens after the happy.
Exactly, they don't show
happily ever after. Right?
The arguments, the disagreements, like we have those. You know what I mean? But it just, I don't know. It is society got to wake up. Yeah. They got to sort some shit out. Like do some self help. Because I have been involved with people before, and some women just had some really major issues. Like they're good people, but they really had some internal stuff going on. Whether they felt insecure or whatnot, I don't know. Because I do have insecurities as well, but I'm very secure with myself at the same time. And sometimes it can be a little too much at times. I can tell.
Yep.
You know, just the reaction that some people have. I'm like, you know whatever. That's fine, cool. It was a good time. That's whatever. It is what it is at this point.
So do you try and like do things to like work on those aspects where you know like your flaws are?
I try to work on my flaws, but at the same time, like who I am is who I am. I don't want to morph into something that I'm not, because therefore I'm gonna have resentment towards that person, or that person gonna leave me anyway. So it's like I did all this for nothing. I don't know who I am anymore. So I know who I am. Yeah. You know, it took a lot for me to find out who I am, but I know I'm very comfortable where I'm at. Well, I'm not gonna say comfortable, but I do have an idea of who I am. Like I've done the work. I like mental health, physical, accountability. I look at myself in the mirror, you know, because I have been toxic myself, for sure, absolutely. Yep. And I tell anybody, I say, yeah, I've been toxic, but I say I worked on it. And not to say I don't have toxic moments, because I do, because I'm human, and I went through a lot as well. Yeah, but this whole perfection thing is like, well, I tell some women, I say, look, you got to stop this. I say, I understand you might want to do with 6 figures and all that, but the chances of finding that is very slim.
Well, that's the thing, is like that on their side, that's what the danger of social media is, right? It's like, so what you have now, and I saw actually somebody talking about this on a different podcast the other day, is you have this very small percentage of men that's getting their choice of all the women. Right. I mean, when they're swiping through Tinder and everything else, like there's this like less than 5% of the men on there are actually going to fit what these women say they're looking for. Where it's like a guy over 6 feet tall who makes $150,000 a year, owns a house like this. It's like, that's like 1.8% of total men.
Right.
And like even less on Tinder. So when you find that guy, and so if you're one of those guys, sweet. For you, right? Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
But then these guys know it too. It's like they have their pick of all of the women.
Right.
And so all the women are going. And so, but it was never like that before social media. Because the women didn't know unless it was like the hottest guy in their town,
right,
or at their bar.
I was saying it too.
Or,
yeah, that's true.
Right. So if it was that guy, then it was like, okay, like that's the hottest guy here. But now they're like, oh, 10 miles away is this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy.
Keep swiping.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then those guys have their pick of getting, 1,000 likes, and they can just go through and find whoever they want.
Pretty much.
In the meanwhile, the other 89% of dudes that's on there is swiping for no reason at all. And they're never gonna get into that algorithm of the women who they are attracted to.
No. But also, some guys are crazy too, because some dudes want a woman, with a big ass and all these different things, but they don't have nothing to offer themselves.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they don't have the compassion, they don't have the personality, they don't have anything to, or even I guess to protect the vibe. They don't have the protection to be there for them. So it's just like I said. I think people in general are just fucked. They need to really just do some therapy, really seek some help. Stop taking advice from memes and social media. Like, actually go to an actual therapist.
Yeah.
And really, you know what I'm saying? Just like admit your own faults. Look yourself in the mirror and write stuff you don't like about yourself and read it. You know what I mean? And then write what you like about yourself. And I think that's how you can find a partner. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, but it's just a weird thing. Yeah. It's been like the past 20 years, it has changed significantly. It is so weird. I feel bad for some of the younger people that's coming up right now.
Yeah.
It is so weird.
None of that, because none of that was a thing.
No.
Tinder wasn't a thing. Like when we turned 21, you just had to approach women at a bar.
You meet people in person. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or at a gym or somewhere. I mean,
if you go do that now,
right,
you're a creep.
Facts.
Try to talk to a woman they're just like, oh, I just want to meet a guy in a grocery store. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you
Stop
don't.
saying that.
I can't even say hi to you at the grocery store without you calling security. And I'm like, I don't think I'm like a bad looking or a super creepy looking dude. Maybe, I guess.
I guess it's how you do
apparently, it. I'm not like, hey.
I guess
but
it's like
if I
a
just
sign.
say like, hey, how's it going? Just any small talk conversation.
Right.
Like, then let's just avoid it. And it's like, well, that was never really a thing.
Right.
Before, And so, but there's a certain demographic. If it's a woman that's like our age, will usually respond appropriately.
Right.
At least say, I'm not even trying to hit on just basic conversation.
Yeah.
Everybody's on phone, just waiting in line. Everybody's on phones. And I've been guilty of it before too. I've been trying not to.
I have to. I can admit that. I seen a couple one time I was out and they was on their phone the whole time. They're not even engaging at all. It's like, what's the point? I'd be like, look, let's just go home.
Yeah.
We could have did that at home. Why spend all this money on this food if we're not even talk to each other? You know what I mean? Like, it's, oh my God. I love technology, but at the same time, I see the detriment. I guess, I don't know, it's just a pain. We got to have a balance for sure.
That's what I think. I think kids now, they've grown up with it so much that there's probably going to be a shift in that too. Or I think they're going to really get back to, I think kids, businesses, everything else, you're going to start to see this shift back to in-person things. We got away from the whole, especially during COVID, the whole brick and mortar businesses. I think you're going to start to probably see a lot of that stuff come back.
Yeah.
Because people are hungry for it.
I hope so.
I'm done with buying stuff on Amazon and sitting at home just waiting for it to come.
Right.
I think people need connection, right? That's the answer to most things is connection.
Yeah.
It's the answer really. The main thing that we do with addiction is connecting people.
Absolutely.
And so we can get people connected in an environment long enough that they are going to have, build these relationships that are strong enough to support them, have a long enough accountability. It's going to work out. Human connection to God, connection spiritually, connection with other people, connection with whatever it is, connection to purpose, connection to hope, this connection piece. But you're not going to get that if you sit at home.
No.
You can do AA meetings on Zoom, and they can be great because they work during COVID. But we were running them in person and getting a whole bunch of freaking heat and shit for it. But it's people need that.
Right.
It's don't come if you have COVID or you're sick. Cool. Stay home then. But otherwise, people need to be together.
Absolutely.
They need to be together. They have to. That's what's going to save. That's what's going to save people is that connection.
Well, that's what I had with my therapist when I was going. It happened right before COVID. But anyway, when COVID happened, it was like, hey, you should do FaceTime. I said, well, if I can't be there in person, I'm not doing it at all. And I stopped going because it's not the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the internet can drop, lag or whatever. And also I'm an intimate kind of guy. I like to be in people's presence.
Mm-hmm.
I want to really engage, look in your eyes, and you know what I mean, read your body language, and it's just a different dynamic when it's in person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do want to get back to therapy eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Oh, me too.
Just to talk about shit.
I love it. I love it, man.
Yeah, just real shit, man. Just like real thoughts, man.
Yeah.
Even if people like it or not, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is my opinion. It's not it's facts. It's just opinions.
Right.
Viewpoints.
Yeah. You know, it's the connection and who you connect to. We talked about the importance of having that small circle of people. And you know, one thing that I've realized over time is like the standard that people as soon as they start holding themselves to a higher standard, right? Like one thing that I do, that I at least try to really focus on overall is like it's probably to at some point a detrimental level on some aspect, but a higher standard than I hold anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I held myself accountable to a higher way of operating than I do. My standard for everybody else, according to me, is lower than that. And so like, if I'm never going to tell somebody to do something that I'm not doing. And I've found that, and with the people I listen to, it's like Andy Frisella is one of those guys, the guy that started 75 Hard. He talks about this idea of personal excellence, right? So it's like, you should always be pursuing, it's not being better than anyone, better than somebody else. It's your own actual personal best. And not like I tried my personal best, like actually pushing yourself in whatever the direction is, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of the directions, to be the best that you can be in that area of your life. And people just don't hold themselves accountable to that, just the self-accountability thing. And that's why I liked doing 75 Hard. And that's why I'm going to do it again. It's like, there's this aspect of like, I'm not doing it against anybody and I'm not doing it for anybody else. And nobody knows if I quit and nobody knows if I cheat, right? Like if I cheat on it, I'm only cheating myself. If I fail it and I don't actually fail because I wanted to justify it, then like I only failed myself. I'm only cheating myself, and it's only just perpetuating my own cycle of toxic shit that I do to myself.
Yeah.
Nobody else is hurt by it.
Right.
You know, like we've got to this idea that like if there's a winner, there has to be a loser, and it's not true. Everybody can win. Like it's not like everybody gets a medal, but everybody can be a winner. You can be in the same industry competing for the same things and both be winning. Like if you're competing in a healthy way, like say you're selling shoes and you guys are next door to each other and you're competing and selling shoes, and this guy sells more one week and he's more the other week. The bottom line is that you're both selling a whole ton of shoes. Facts. And you're both making money and you're both winning. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that one's a winner and one's a loser.
Right.
Like, so like it's good to do that. And they're, you know, pushing themselves to do new marketing and new branding and, you know, get on a podcast and talk about their shoes, whatever it is. Like they're pushing themselves to be better. And as soon as people realize like, that's all it is, you know, this self-accountability. And so like when recovery, we're trying to get people in an environment long enough of other people pushing them until they realize they can do it themselves.
Right.
It's like, oh, like I need accountability, and I still need accountability. I have a whole group of people that will have no problem calling me out on my own shit. Like that's why I have a therapist. I have a therapist where I can sit down and try and justify it, and she's like, "That's nice. Let's circle back to what we were actually talking about."
That's what's up. I like
you
that.
know, like you're trying to justify your own shit again. Like, you know, I need people that are like, "Yep, you're right. I need to be called on." And you know, I like to think that I'm right a lot of the time, but on those times that I'm not, I need to make sure that I'm around somebody that's going to be like, "Hey, that's not okay."
Yeah, that's important.
You know, I need people and feel comfortable with it and feel like I'm not going to, you know, snap back at them because I'm like pissed that they're calling me out on my own shit. Now I might try and argue with them and debate it at first, but I know like after a minute, I'm going to be like, "You're right."
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that like that's been the biggest growth for me.
Accountability.
In the last few years. Like that wasn't a thing in early recovery. Like I would still be defensive on my shit then.
Yeah.
But over the last several years, like I need people that are like, "Hey, you're not living the way that you say that you're living." You know, or you're not showing up the way that, you know, one thing about it is like showing up, like the integrity of doing exactly what you say you're going to do every single time. Like if I make a commitment to be somewhere, like, man, there's been so many, like, especially like lately with doing everything else, I make commitment to something, then that day comes up and I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, like, like I got way too much to do today to be doing this too. But I committed to it, and then I go there though, and I go to whatever it is, and I'm like, good thing I went.
Yes,
You know?
exactly. I do the same thing, man. Oh God, you know, I'm notorious for that.
And that's like church. It's like I wake up on Sunday mornings and I'm like, dude, I could take a day, I could sleep in, I'm gonna watch the football game, but I'm like, I just need to go there for 1 hour.
Right.
You can go to church
That's not
for
bad.
you can go to church for 1 hour.
Yeah.
And then I go there and I hear a message and I'm like, and I see a few people, I'm like, yep, that's why I went.
Then you see people you like.
Yeah. And then I get out and then I come back home and I still get to watch football. And I'm like, oh, like that hour would not have been I wouldn't have been doing anything else worthwhile during that same hour.
Besides laying down, that's
Right.
pretty much it. Yeah.
That other hour of sleep is not going to affect the course of my life
No.
or anything else. But that hour at church that when I heard a message that I need to hear,
Mhm.
that's going to change some shit this week.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. See, talking to you, man, make me want to, like I said, read some of those books.
Yeah.
Well, at least that I can. It's just hard to sit down and read anything right now.
I got a whole shelf of personal development stuff. You want to pick
Really?
one out?
Man, I might have to get the audio book, man. Especially when I'm on elliptical, I just had to listen to it while I'm on the thing or whatever. Because it's hard to sit down and read. It is.
Yeah.
It's really, because I like to read. I love it.
Yeah.
It's just my time.
I agree. And I mean, I fall into the trap of like the Netflix trap, right? Like, because by the end
I don't even do that.
Oh, by the end of my, like, and I, you know, and I'll do it at night. That's like my hour of time.
You need that, though.
Yeah, I do. And that's like, and I've thought about like, I should just read during that time, not do it, not do the Netflix thing. And I'm like, you know what? Like, it's like, no.
You got to live, man.
Yeah.
You got to have fun sometimes.
And I need, that's that. And then I'll still, even like before I go to bed, I'll still like try and read a couple pages.
Oh, that's good.
You know, it's like and I don't do that all the time and consistently.
Right.
But like I have the book on my nightstand that I will actually pick up, even if it's like I don't judge myself if I read half a page or whatever. You know, it's like the aspect of picking up the book, reading the book.
It's something, right?
It's something.
Yeah.
You know,
you build a vocabulary, you build in your mind.
Yeah, and it's just like, and if that's what I put in my mind, and I know I put it in a lot of, you know, like if I'm watching Netflix, I'm watching like people die and stuff. You know, I'm watching gunfights, I'm watching drug deals, I'm watching like. Yeah. I'm not watching.
No judge, man.
I'm not watching anything good on there. Like,
no, I watch those things.
I'm not watching documentaries on to make my life better. I'm watching death and violence and drugs.
It is okay.
Yeah,
it's right. Like I gotta have a balance, right? Man, you know.
But so then I'll read a couple pages before I go to bed, and I'm like, okay, now I'm good. Now I get something good in my mind before. That's probably why I don't sleep the best. I don't know, but
I think that has something to do with
perfect.
it. No, I think that has something to do with it for real. Like, I think like depending on what you're watching, what you consume, it definitely affects the way you sleep.
Oh, it totally does.
And just your energy in general. So I try to balance those things because I'm a horror movie fan. I love horror movies. Yeah, I do. Oh God, I do. I'm a junkie for that. I don't watch it as much anymore, but I'm definitely a fan. Yeah, I don't really watch much of anything these days. I might watch the YouTube stuff, like some fitness stuff, or I might watch the crime stuff because like I've been around and stuff. I know people, whatever. But I watch certain things like that. I do watch like Joe Dispenza sometimes as well.
That's good.
Yeah, I try to watch that and Wayne Dyer, and I watch those things sometimes as well. Not as consistent the way I should, but I do try to watch them at times just to work on my mindset, just to try to, you know, keep my focus.
Joe Dispenza stuff is awesome. I'm glad that you said that name. I was trying to think of his name the other day, and it was one of those names. I was like, the guy that does the thing with the brain.
Yeah, I mean, he's really smart.
Oh man, his stuff is so good.
It is.
If you like really put his stuff, and I haven't. That's one guy that I'd really like to focus more stuff on. Yeah, because he is so smart and all of his stuff. Anybody that's ever used his stuff, it like swears by it. Yeah. It's one of those guys that, and it like he backs it up with science.
But they got a documentary on Amazon Prime. Yeah, he's made an appearance. I didn't finish the whole thing because I fell asleep on it a while back. But yeah, dude's incredible. He had a crazy back injury. He healed himself. He had the right mindset. That's pretty much how I got myself together. Well, I wasn't watching him, but well, I did after a while. But I had to have a kind of mindset to get through what I was dealing with as well, because I couldn't even walk for a while. It was bad.
Really? So how'd you do that?
I herniated my disc from deadlifting and doing like crazy weight with squats and stuff. Yeah, I jacked myself up, man. I didn't listen to my body at all. I just kept pushing the issue, and I could not get up. I had sciatic nerve damage from my left glute to my foot. It was like the most painful thing I ever felt in my life. It was bad. I wanted to kill myself because it was just pain. It was like this electric pain, like nonstop. You know what I mean? And so I tried everything. Also, I had to like really work on my mindset. I had to like think positive. Like, I'm gonna walk again. I'm gonna run again. And I did. It took a few months, but I did. I started working again. I started to get back to the gym again. That was the biggest thing. I could not work out. That was killing me because working out has been part of my life for a long time. Because I used to fight once upon a time, and that was my therapy. And I was doing yoga for a while as well, which is that keeps me calm as well because it's very spiritual. Yeah, it is. And to not be able to do those things was really hard for me. It was bad. I started to get real depressed, man. But I came up out of it.
So did you have to go like physical therapy route and all that?
Yeah, I go to the chiropractor twice a month still. I was going like 2 times a day once upon a time.
Okay.
Yeah, I was paying a lot of money.
So how long ago was it when you did that?
Oh, it was back in May 2022.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it wasn't that
long ago. No. And I started back working, I think, in August.
Okay.
September. And that's when I had signed a membership with Crunch around that time period. That's when I was able to work out. I started slowly get back into the routine again, and had to really be careful. Had to tread lightly because my back was still like fucked up, and trying to drive was horrible. Yeah. But I got myself together. I started stretching more. I started, eat better. I bought like turmeric powder and black pepper, and those things are great for inflammation. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I done the cold plunge, which sucks.
I gotta get mine filled back up.
Oh man, good luck, man. Geez. I didn't do it outside like you did.
Yeah.
No, hell no, I ain't doing that. I did laser therapy. I did all kind of shit, man.
Have you ever done dry needling?
Yes, I done that. The decon bed where they stretch your spine. I done all that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, cupping. Yeah, he left all those marks on my body.
Yeah, I love that.
It feels good, doesn't it?
Good.
Yeah, it is. It's so an ugly mark, but
I know. I got a massage therapist lady that does it.
Nice.
I sort of spent way too much money on her.
It's a lot of money, man.
Yeah, but it was like so worth it.
And
I was like, man, I'm not independently wealthy. I can't.
No.
It can't be like this has to be like a treat, not like a weekly.
Right. Exactly. Now, if I had the kind of money, I'd get it done.
I would get it done.
Well, not every day, but every week.
My he's like, what's the end game? My end game is to be able to do that like every week, like chiropractor, massage, physical therapy, like to get do that like Tom Brady routine where you're like, where you're going to be 90 and you look like you're 42.
Fact. Yeah, exactly.
Because you're in like a cryo chamber every day.
Yeah, man.
Like everything is like, you're seeing all the specialists. Like that's the life. If I can get to that lifestyle of being able to afford, where it's like, oh, I can spend $10,000 a month on my body.
Man, LeBron James.
I know. Those guys are spending stupid amounts of money.
That's why he played the way he plays now.
Yep.
I mean, he's slowing down.
Yeah. But not for being in the league for what, 20-something years?
Yeah, 20-something years.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a long time. Especially how hard it is on your body, jumping around on your with your knees and everything.
On that level.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like he's still playing at a high level. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's my goal is to definitely get to that level, like financially, where I can be able to take care of myself. Mm-hmm. I mean, because I think we aging gracefully, to be honest. We are. We doing our thing. I would like to definitely age gracefully as I get older, for sure. Next 20 years, I want to be on that level where I can still move around pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even mention that part. So I had the end of 2017, end of 2018. Mm-hmm. I got diagnosed with MS.
What?
Yeah. So I have MS also.
Really?
Yeah. So I had and I thought it was because of a back injury. So my back was like, I had a bunch of back soreness, like lower back, everything else. And I started having numbness in my feet. It was like, it would go up like up my legs to a point. And so I get back work done, chiropractic, dry needling, all these things. And over time, and I was still working on everything, it would go away. And so then I didn't think that anything of it. And then it came back and it was a crazy numbness. It was like, it was not like it was numb, like when your hand falls asleep numb. It was numb like I was wearing a wetsuit.
Wow.
So where you could feel, it's like if you're wearing a wetsuit, you can feel the pressure.
Yeah.
But you couldn't feel surface touch, right?
Oh, man.
So it was like my skin was like a wetsuit. And I was like, that's weird because I can still do things.
Yeah.
Like it's not, and I can still, but I but because I couldn't feel the surface, like I couldn't like write and whatnot, but I could still do things. I could still like do the motions of it, but I couldn't feel it. And so us being, like having a high pain tolerance, I waited till it was like really bad.
Wow.
And I was seeing a physical therapist, and I told her about it, and she's like, you need to go get checked out. And so I go to the urgent care, and they're like, you need to go to the hospital and get looked at. So I go to the hospital, was in the hospital for like 9 hours. They did MRIs and stuff, and found two or three lesions on my brain and one on my C-spine. And then you have your diagnosis is, so they never diagnose you with MS. Like you can't have it. You just have symptoms that are consistent with MS, which is a weird way to phrase it.
Interesting.
And so I was there, and then they told me that, and she's like, well, I'll give you some time to like think about it and whatever. I was like, just tell me what we need to do, because that's how I operate, right? Like okay, well, you told me, now what do I do next? And so they went over the stuff, and then they gave me a bunch of steroids and stuff to make the inflammation go down. And what they said at the time was like, what can set it off is stress is a big thing. And yeah, stress, lack of sleep. And so I started working. I'd been working in the treatment industry in Boulder for about a year. And so I was in a high stress environment. I did some rotating overnight shifts.
Oh man.
So I was not sleeping. There was some stuff going on like relationship wise. And so I was stressed in that. And so I wasn't sleeping, and so I wasn't eating good. And so I was like, a lot of the things kind of lined up. And then that happened during that period of time. I was going, actually at that time was like when I was going through a breakup. And so like, there was like all of these like combination of things that went into it. And so like, they're saying because the way that I used to manage stress and these high intensity things before was drugs and alcohol. Cause I could numb it with that. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just going to go get drunk, pass out. And like for the purpose of that, like, for people that are addicts and whatnot, it is a solution, right? Like drugs and alcohol are a legit solution for a period of time. I need to escape. I need to numb. I need to not have this problem right now. And this solves it immediately. It's not a solution, but it solves it right now. And so in that moment, I didn't have those things anymore. I didn't have those tools and resources for that level of stress. Like, right. So I had gone through some stressful things in sobriety, but not an overwhelming amount. And so when it got to be like this overwhelming, my body was just like, that was the reaction. It was an autoimmune response. Unfortunately, like I haven't had anything since then, but I left the hospital that night, and the only time that I've ever broke down about it was when I got out to my car leaving the hospital. And like, I got in my car and just bawled my eyes out for like 2 minutes, yelled at God. And then I remembered from one of those Bible studies, somebody was like, thank God in everything. And I just, for whatever reason, remember that. And I was like, after I just cursed God out, it's like, thanks God. I don't know why, but I was like, F you and thank you. Thank you, because I'm supposed to.
Yeah, amazing.
Not because I want to. Let's clarify this.
Jeez.
But
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so since then, I went to see a neurologist, and she was like, you should not work in a stressful area. You should get good sleep. You should get nutrition. And I'm like, great. Well, I work in a residential treatment center with a bunch of women in residential treatment, and I am not sleeping much. I can work on that. My diet, I have control over fixing that. The gym, I need to be doing better of. And so since then, what it really did is it really made me, I was already doing those things to a point, but it really made them intentional.
Okay.
And until this day, like when I sleep, like when I go to bed, like I sleep, and like, fortunately my body is now adjusted to like getting up earlier. I don't get up before the sun. I'm not one of those 5 a.m. guys. I get up like my body wakes up basically with the sun at like sunrise. Like I keep my blinds open, so like I'm not in a dark room, because if I do that, I'm gonna be sleeping.
Yeah, you be done the whole day.
I'll be out. But I wake up like naturally. I don't wake up to an alarm, because that like it gives me like that. Unless I have to get up for something, then I'll set an alarm. But I don't startle myself awake. And I'm really, so I focused on sleep. I focused on nutrition. Am I perfect at it? No. I still like eat ice cream and chicken nuggets and shit when I'm not on a 75 hard program for sure. But I've overall been intentionally focused. So it's like, am I at 39, look good, feel good overall? It's like, yeah, but I also have to, because it's like, I've been doing these infusions with this. So when I went to see the neurologist, she said, well, you can do this drug where you take these pills every day, or this once a week shot, or these every 6-week infusions, or they got this new drug that just came out and you do an infusion once every 6 months. And I'm like, well, let's do that. You should have just started there. I'm not trying to do shit every day if I don't have to do it every day.
Right.
So it's called Ocrevus, and it's an infusion treatment that's had awesome results for just keeping everything. It's not necessarily like curing it, but the size of because I get an MRI once a year too, which I actually have to go do on Saturday.
Oh shit.
Which like is a once a year thing, and it's like decreased the size of the lesions, and it hasn't made everything go away, but they've been much more like they haven't grown, and there hasn't been more of them. So it's been the thing about that. And so over time, like it hasn't since 2018 hasn't changed. So 6 years with no change and no the repercussions of it. It's just been that one time. So I've been super grateful for that because I go to like the walk for the MS walk and all these things, and I see how it affects so many other people.
Oh man. Oh God.
And I'm just like, and then I'm just grateful because I'm just like, well, shit, like this could be worse. And that's so I talked to the neurologist, and she's like, well, I'm like, well, what does that look like? Because is this something that I should expect? And she's like, well, it could happen, or you could live to be 75 or 80 or whatever, and then it could get bad then. I'm like, so she's like, you don't really know what it is or how it's going to be. But if you do these things and keep your health on this track, like the odds are greater. The odds are greater of it working out in the long run. So,
wow.
I forget. And the thing is, because it's not until every 6 months, I forget about it. Like it's not something that like comes up.
Wow.
Unless I meet somebody else that talks about it, then I'm like, oh yeah, I have that too.
Yeah.
It's like, but I forget,
Well, I meet people all the time with in my job. So that, wow. And they don't know how they even got it. I asked myself, I said, what happened? They're like, I don't know. I said, what?
Yeah, you don't. It's just, and the thing is like, it's not the weird thing about it is the rarity of it for me. I was 33 when I got diagnosed with it.
Really?
So a healthy 33-year-old male with no family history of it.
What?
It's usually women, typically 20s when they get diagnosed, somewhere in their 20s, and then and with a family history of it in some capacity. And I don't have any of that.
It's crazy, man.
So
wow.
It's one of those things where it's like, and so it's like now if I feel weird almost go to the walk and runs for MS because like people are like actually struggling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have it because they said I do. And like, I'm in good shape. I don't want to like run. I don't want to go out and like run a 10K past everybody. Like, what are you just went out and won the race. Good for you, buddy. Just going to brag about how much better you're doing than the rest of us.
Wow.
That's my own shit though. That's my own head. It's like, that's what I think that everybody else thinks about me. It's like, even if you're doing good, you're still a piece of shit. That's my own insecurities right there. In full display.
God. Oh my God. I feel the same way too. I would. If I was you, oh man, I feel guilty as fuck. But man, that's crazy though. Like I hate to hear that. But you're doing good.
Yeah.
Though.
And that's what everybody says. And I'm like, and that's almost why I hesitate when I talk about it, because I'm like, I don't give it any power.
Right.
Right. So I feel like everything that you talk about, when you speak it, you give it power.
That's true.
And I understand how it helps people. And at the same time, when people are like, I'm sorry that you're going through that, I'm like, but I'm not. Like I went through one thing where it was bad during that time. And since they gave me the steroids that calmed down the physical things, like I had no
problem
implications of it. One thing about it that did change though, I prefer, and this is going to be one thing in the long term, probably, my body prefers hot, humid climates. Like I feel like my body functions really well since that time. These cold, like I don't have as good, my circulation isn't as good in like high in Colorado.
Yeah.
Cold, dry climates. When the summer's here, I feel great.
Right.
Overall. But like when I go to visit my parents in South Carolina and it's like 100 degrees and humid there,
You feel
I
phenomenal.
feel great.
Yeah.
And everybody else is like, it's so hot and humid. I'm like, oh, I can breathe. Like I feel good.
Wow.
My body's like, I go there and I like sweat and I just like, I don't know.
Wow.
Everything feels like it functions well. So maybe the South is supposed to be.
Maybe. Yeah, possibly. They got good food.
They got good.
Great food.
Oh, the food there is like I'm gonna have but then I go there and be like 300 pounds.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. No. That might make your MS even worse. You don't want to do that. No.
No, it's good though. Seafood, I like that.
Oh yeah, it's from the ocean.
Yeah.
It's fresh.
It's fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, do you have like any like a website you want people to like look at for information?
So everything about it's Abundance Foundation Inc. inc.org.
Okay.
So they can go on there. All of our information for the foundation is on there. If people are looking for if you know somebody that's on Medicaid that could benefit from having a recovery coach, there is a tab at the top that says applications. And there'll be a drop-down menu for that. They can apply to our sober living houses. We're actually on a wait list for those right now. Like the houses are full. We're trying to buy 2 new houses coming up this year in Loveland. So that's going to be the next progress of things.
Incredible.
So that's where the need is. Probably another women's house is going to be the next thing on the market, on the agenda for us. But there's be a tab for an application for houses, for just a recovery coach, for scholarship funding into our houses when people need to do that. But you can reach us there. My contact information is on there. And then we got some testimonial videos on there. So if people want to see that, we try and do these testimonial videos. You can follow us on Facebook. Abundance Foundation Inc. is on Facebook. Instagram, Abundance_Foundation is on Instagram too.
Okay, I gotta look for that too and show support as well. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Did you want people to follow your social media or no?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do enough on social media,
Okay.
but we do try and make it a point that when we do our group events, that we're taking pictures of it and taking videos of it and inviting people to it. If you know anybody that's in recovery overall, on Friday nights we're meeting at Genesis Project Church from 6 to 8 p.m. It's 400 South Link Lane in Port Collins, right off of Mulberry and Link Lane. So you're going to show up there, come eat, hang out, enjoy the crowd. So anybody in recovery from anything can come join us for that.
Hey, that's great shit, man. Well, great stuff.
I cuss too much too.
I do. I'm trying to work on that. I can't help it.
I say that I'm going to try and then I just don't. So
right.
I just do it.
Exactly. That's why I do that New Year's resolution stuff, man.
I know.
I make lifestyle changes. At least if I fail, I was like, I give myself grace. I can work on myself again.
What'd you set up for this year? What was your lifestyle change?
What was it? I didn't make one.
Yeah.
I didn't make one this year. I didn't do that. Well, hold on. I guess get back to me on that one.
All right.
Because I don't want to lie.
Right.
I gotta get back to me on that. Yeah. What about you? Did you make something?
No. No. Did you pick a word for the year? Have you ever done that?
I've done it in the past, but not this year.
Okay. No. This year I picked greatness.
Okay.
And I don't know why. It was something that stood out to me. And I'm actually, do you make vision boards? Have you ever made a vision board?
I have before, not lately.
I'm gonna make another. I have greatness on a vision board, and I need to make the rest of it. Vision boards are powerful.
You should write cards, just put on the mirror every morning.
Like that vision board there, we did it as a team last year.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so a lot of stuff on there is starting to come to fruition.
I thought it was a calendar for some reason. When I glanced at it, I didn't look at it all the way.
But the problem is though that one of the women in our group, she put a engagement ring picture on there.
Oh.
And then it was like going to be this thing where we were all going to pass this around.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody can have their time with the vision board. And all it's done is stay on my wall.
Amazing.
Right here. Wow. I'm like, hey, you got to take your vision off of my wall.
Wow. That's amazing. That's pretty cool.
It's cool though, man. I think that they're super powerful. I know that I made one early in my recovery process. I don't still have it, but I know that there were things on that have come to fruition over time.
You stuck by it at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like, as soon as there's what is it? Habakkuk 2:2. It's write your vision and make it plain. And that's part of that scripture that goes into, for it'll come in its appointed time, even though it takes a long time.
Mm.
I probably completely misquoted that, but it's along those,
That's okay.
it's along those lines of the scripture. But write your vision and make it plain. And so it's like vision boards are
you meant well.
Our scripture, and so that's why writing it down is good.
Yeah,
you know, writing any of your stuff down is good.
That's why I need to start.
Journaling is good.
My handwriting's so terrible these days.
It doesn't matter. You can read it.
Some stuff I can't. I said, who wrote that? I said, what did I write?
It's just the aspect of writing it.
Yeah, that's true.
Even at the time, even if you don't go back to it.
That's true.
It's writing.
What I mean, that's like a muscle. Well, it is a muscle.
It is, yeah.
But we don't write these days.
And it just gets it out. And that's what makes it real. So if you are thinking about, if you got an idea and you put it down and it's on paper, then when it's here, it's just an idea and it's not real. There's no tangible thing to it. Yeah. And it's not a tangible thing. When it's on a piece of paper and you're right, like, I'm going to have this car, or I want this car, or I'm going to do this to get this car. Like, everything in you starts to move in that direction.
It does. That makes sense, especially when you read it. You're like, okay, this is what I want.
Yeah. And then you go to the car dealership and it's like, yeah, maybe you're making however much money. If you go sit in a new Ferrari, one day you're going to drive it. Guaranteed. I have a black Mercedes McLaren as the background picture on my phone. And I've sat in it before.
Oh, nice.
And I know, like, and material things aren't my thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a thing that, like, I came to a long time ago. And I'm like, okay, this is the car that I want. And I actually did a job for a guy, this random thing a long time ago. Actually, it was probably during 2020. And he had one in his garage. This guy was like an average dude, but he was like a computer nerd type.
Oh, he made
and so
money.
So he made a bunch of money and he didn't have a bunch of like material things, but he had a car like that. Mm-hmm. I was like, can I sit in it? And he was like, yeah, like it's just a car. Like to him, it was just, I was like, and to me, it was like this massive thing that wasn't real. And I sat in it and I was like, oh, it's just a car.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't real to me. And so now that I have it on the background, I'm going to have one of those one day.
Hey, go for it. Yeah, make it come to
fruition.
Material
things. I'm not all about the material stuff, but like that's going to be the thing, though.
But it's okay to have nice things sometimes.
Yeah. It's when I have it, though, that I'm going to be able to show it. Like, this is the back of my phone for like 7 years.
There you go. Exactly.
And then I had it.
And then, I mean, while you're alive, why not?
Yeah, you should. Like, people discount like going for material stuff. It's like, oh, don't be materialistic. It's like, no. If that's what's going to get you to the next level is like wanting the material things, wanting nice watches and clothes and whatever, like do that.
Yeah.
Just go for that. Like totally be materialistic about if that's going to be what drives you to the next goal. Because once you have the stuff, you can go to the next level of growth where you realize it's not about the stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to be not about the stuff until you have the stuff.
Exactly. That is facts. Yeah.
So go get the shit. Go get the cool shit. Buy cool clothes. Get a cool car.
You heard it. That's what he said. All right. Now, I appreciate this, man. This has been a great conversation, and you're doing some incredible work, man. Just keep it up.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. This is fun,
man.
It
is. It's
I haven't had a conversation like this in a long time.
Yeah, it's great. It's therapeutic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me over here. Well, you could have came over to my house if you wanted to, but it was either or. It didn't matter.
Either way. Yeah. Wherever you want to get together, man. We got a better couch in there. We should just sit on the couch.
That would have been cool, too. That would have been dope, for real. We might have to do a part 2 for real. Though.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I agree.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I like that. Yeah, get more of your story on it. We can just chop it up about whatever. Man.
Okay, yeah. My story is all over the place, man. Oh, yeah, indeed. All right. Well, this is Brian Bauer once again. Stay tuned in for the next episode. Oh, you have any last words? Any shout outs?
None. Shout out to the whole Abundance Foundation family, the team, all of our clients. None of this is possible without all the work that you guys put in every day. So appreciate that. Friends and family for the support. Definitely appreciate all you guys. If you have anything or any needs, definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
You heard. All right. You guys have a blessed one. Stay tuned in for the next episode. Peace.